Sleepy town settling for the night, where the Owens women live their lives. And it's about time that the back porch light comes on at that house down the street, at that house on Magnolia Street.
Hey, witch, hey!
Hi, beautiful lady. What you doing all cute today?
I wanted to put on all the eyeliner because I'm feeling super witchy today.
It's a little spooky. We're heading into spooky season with this.
This is the kickoff.
Dude,
This episode is the kickoff.
I'm so stoked. I know we get to kind of experience spooky season.
Wait. Plug your microphone in. It's not plugged in.
It is not plugged in.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
I hear Zoom sound. I don't hear mic sound. There you go. Oh my God. If we did the whole episode and I didn't realize
That's because I had to re-download everything on my computer and all the settings were changed. It's plugged in.
There you go.
It just does not automatically recognize my snowball now.
Oh, all right. So do you have to do that every time?
No, I hope not. I sure hope not. But yeah, I was saying, we'll just keep all that in. We get to experience spooky season like 3 weeks early. We get so prepped with doing these episodes this far in advance, but it just makes it that much more fun because this is the best time of year. It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Don't you sing Christmas songs. Don't be that person.
Sorry, I had you on mute. I was popping my demon whispers to get fully into it. No, it truly is the most wonderful time of the calendar year.
Yeah, the witch's New Year. We were just talking about that before. Like, it's funny how it kind of worked out. Like, we launched the podcast on Halloween. That wraps the year for us. So, we're heading straight to that. It's getting close.
We're coming up on it.
You're coming up on it.
So tell me what you did this morning to put yourself in the spooky mood.
Well, I have my cold brew right here in my little spooky cup with I showed you my ice cubes, right?
Yeah.
I got these like skulls and pumpkin ice cube tray molds from the dollar store. I use those all year round. Yeah, I'm a spooky bitch. Oh, and also I put on my Ouija board t-shirt.
Very nice. You look like a badass today. You're like a little black shirt. You look like a pink lady, like ready to rumble.
Is that from what's that from?
Grease.
Oh, Grease. I'm thinking of Sons of Anarchy. I'm like, what do you mean I'm ready to rumble? I don't. All right, yeah.
You're so funny.
Grease. That's of course.
Well, hey, witch, hey, I'm Christina.
Hey, I'm Justina. Welcome.
Welcome everybody to Magnolia Street, the one and only Practical Magic Fandom podcast.
Yes.
Dude, fall is coming. It's in the air.
You were thrifting it up this past week. Tell us what you bought.
Dude, I have not had this much luck with a Goodwill find where everything fit. And I know you bought those like embroidered beautiful jeans, but like sometimes you just hit it and you nail it. And I bought a couple sweaters. I'll get to the premier piece here in a second. Some sweaters, some dresses, some tops for stuff that you and I have going on. And I'm looking at all of it together and all the colors. And I was like, that right there is a Virgo ascending because it's all like earthy tones and muted tones and like greens and yellows and browns. But I got these. So y'all have heard about the pleather pants of my past as a altar server. Anyway,
you're not in your past no more.
Not in my past no more. I found a pair of pants that are like shiny pleathery on the front, just on the front, and like normal jeggings on the back. And I'm gonna totally wear them all the time. I think it just makes it that much more like razzle dazzle, ready for the night. You can pair it with anything. How cute would those black pants be with a chunky sweater or like a flowy black top? You can go either way.
Totally. I think you should wear them to our Midnight Margarita meetup with your Magnolia Street t-shirt.
100. I might just bring those and those only, just those pants, and I'll wear them like to bed.
Yeah. To bed.
I'll wear them out on the town.
Multi-purpose. You could, wear them out of town, wear them to bed, wear them while you're altar serving.
I was so stoked because I had, like I said, I told you, I used to have a pair of pants that just had like a little pleather stripe down the side, and it made it just like a little more like you can go out on the town, pair it with anything. But they started to wear because I wore them all over the place on planes. You just look like a little nicer.
Yeah.
But there was like a whole wart in the butt because I wore them so much, and I had to get rid of them.
Did they have like a split? Like, did you have a moment where you like bent over and they just split and you were like, ah, fuck.
No. It was just like worn. You could like start to see my underwear, and I was like,
Okay.
we gotta get rid of these suckers. But yeah, I'm really excited because you and I are gonna be getting some photos taken together, and we got ourselves a theme. And your closet's already full of really, really cute stuff. So I'm just gonna bring everything, and you tell. I was thinking about you when I was in this store today, because you would love this store. And I was just thinking, I was like, if Justina were here, this would be so much easier. She could just tell me what to buy, just put shit on me that I would not normally like put together or that I'm not comfortable with. And then we'd have a grand time.
Yeah, I love thrifting. I don't do it often, but when I do, I just have so much fun. And you never know what you're gonna find, you know? It's like going through your grandma's attic, just picking out pieces, putting them together. That skirt, the Sally skirt, the one that I showed you, that was thrifted. I thrifted that. And I also think a couple of the tops that I showed you were actually thrifted. So you never know what you're going to find. Lots of cool 90s witchy aesthetic pieces. If you're looking for like vintage 90s shit, go thrifting.
Go to the thrift store.
Go to the thrift store if you want those
loaded
classic the goth pieces, right?
Yeah, the amount of velvet that I saw, like full green velvet dresses with like lacy bits and like cinched and rufflies. I was like, oh my God, we're back in it was the 90s. It was awesome.
All about the velvet and the lace.
Yeah.
And the cinch. Some corduroy too. I wore a lot of corduroy in my day. We just want to remind you guys that while we are recording this, it is still like kind of summertime. It's August 17th while we're recording this. So we are still in the middle of summer while we're talking about all this fall stuff. But Christina's like got me all jazzed about this shit with this topic that we're going to talk about today. And like, I didn't realize that like it was this spooky or it had this many like spooky undertones. I'm super excited to talk about
how much it's like tied into history, because initially I had just heard Griffin Dunne use this term in passing. I was like, oh, interesting. And then he talked about, we'll get there. He talks about it a little bit. And I'm like, it totally slipped my mind that this was a thing and Victorians are obsessed with death.
Yeah. And the Victorians used this method that we're going to talk about today, right?
That's right. So what are we doing?
All ties together. So today Christina actually picked this topic. We had this topic on our list for a really long time. Since the beginning, you wanted to talk about this, right?
Yes, exactly. But I think it's the perfect way to start off our snowball of a spooky lineup that we have for the rest of our year.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm stoked. I'm ready to go. Ready. Do we have anything that we have to tend to before we jump right into this? Oh, did you know it's Black Cat Appreciation Day?
Oh my gracious. I appreciate
is.
you when you're not throwing up and things.
Yeah.
Are we guys, we're in Salem October 11th through the 15th. We'll give you a little more detail at the very end of the show, but if you want to come hang out with us, we're having an event on Friday, October 13th, Salem, Massachusetts. Check out our Eventbrite link in our show notes, Koji bio. Check it all out. It's right there. But we really hope we see you guys out there. And is there anything else?
I don't think so. I don't think so today. I think we're ready. I just want to jump right in.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to talk about daguerreotype photography today. And if you are not familiar, that's okay. We weren't either. But Griffin Dunne in the commentary talks about a technique or a visual representation that he was inspired to use when it came to Jimmy's eyes when he is a ghost. So when we see him and Gary kind of go toe to toe, and how his eyes kind of like flicker in the light. Griffin was inspired by a process called daguerreotype photography. So we're going to talk about that today.
I have a question. So the daguerreotype, it's just his eyes, or is it the whole black and white effect that they put on Jimmy in that scene?
I know as much as you know, and I'm just going to read what Griffin says and how he describes, I guess, how he saw ghost Jimmy.
All right.
So he says in the commentary, we batted around a lot of ideas, and I don't remember what the inception of the idea was, but Rob, talking about Robin, and I love daguerreotype photos. And somebody showed us this book of the daguerreotype photos in the 1860s. They used to take pictures. Parents would take pictures with their children who had died from cholera and all of the many other diseases going around. They would dress up the children when they were dead and take their picture. These daguerreotype cameras were very effective for them because the only time the child could stay still was unfortunately when it was dead.
That's so morbid.
No.
So
And like
morbid.
daguerreotype was not just used for post-mortem photography. So it was interesting to me that he says like, I love daguerreotype photography. And then somebody gives him a book of post-mortem pictures, I guess. So he says, and it was just a book of all of these. Denise could never even look at it. It was a terrible book to look at. But we were looking at the eyes of all these different children and the various other dead people. It wasn't just children. It made us think about Jimmy and what daguerreotype photo is and how temporary it is. You know, with the light being sort of flashed onto the plates, and as the photograph ages, it sort of becomes kind of scaly and different colors that come out of the black and white. Jimmy is kind of like scaly looking, like gritty, right?
Yeah, he's got like, and we talk about this a little later on when we talk about the scene in the movie. Yeah, he's got like kind of like splotches on his skin, like,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure if it's mold or dirt stains from being in
Or
the ground.
decomposition, right?
Right, yeah.
Right.
Or is it a photo effect? I don't know.
But Griffin continues and he says that it was a great starting point for getting the dialogue about the special effects we wanted to use. So we studied the daguerreotype photos, all different kinds, to find the image. And once we had an image like that, you know, it freed up all the other ones in the sequence. The ghost sequence where he sticks his hand in Gary's chest. There were a million different confrontation ideas before that one, all storyboarded, and they were so fantastic and so incredible as to be unrealistic and not even in tune with the movie. The one thing I learned about this movie was to keep it simple. So I guess everybody on the storyboard creation team probably had him like done up very kind of spooky and scary, but he wanted to dial it back and kind of hone in on this process, the look of the daguerreotype photography that it left on the deceased people he saw in those books.
Right. Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about the daguerreotype scene in the movie. So we heard Griffin talk a little bit about what scene that was specifically. But we're going to deep dive. So in the practical magic film, we see this daguerreotype effect at about 1 hour, 20 minutes, and 52 seconds. As Sally's making her way back to the Magnolia Street mansion after her deposition with Gary, she hears voices of her little girls, Kylie and Antonia, crying for her. And as she rushes back to the house, she is met by her distressed little girls, confirming those messages that her intuition was sending her. She tells her girls to go downstairs, and she makes her way up to the attic where Jillian was bunking. As she arrives, she sees Jillian in the bed, wriggling and writhing about before Gary comes in, gunslinging, ready to save the day. And so when the shot goes back to Jillian, as she's sitting up in the bed, Jimmy's spirit can be seen emerging from her body. And when Jillian falls back onto the pillow, Jimmy sits straight up, kind of like emerging out of her body. When we see Jimmy, he is kind of like in this black and white effect, and he has that, I guess, daguerreotype effect on him. However, his eyes still look somewhat normal here. It's not really noticeable like right as soon as he like pops out of her body. So then Jimmy says, "Officer Hallet, just looking at you makes me homesick." And then Gary is speechless. Sally's clinging to the wall, trying to stay out of Jimmy's way. Jimmy's ghost stands up, and we see him from the back. He cricks his neck a little bit, and as he starts to circle a still speechless Gary, he moves around Gary. We start to see some of the stains on Jimmy's clothing, which could be dirt, like we said before, from being buried in the garden, but also, like, you know, like the old splotches on an old photo.
Yes.
Kind of also kind of reminds me of that a little bit, because like on his shirt there's like dirt stains. It could be from being buried under the ground, but when we get a close-up of his face, there's kind of more of like, it looks like it could be mold. It looks like it could be like wet spots from a photo that's had water on it for too long. Like it's very cool how they did this effect.
Yes, this scene is very like cat and mouse too. Like he's just playing with them. It is kind of like a Wild West scene. Like they're like circling each other in the high noon, center town.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I never thought about that before, but yeah, it's basically like outlaw and sheriff, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Head to head. Exactly. I never thought about that till you just brought that up. So Gary goes to raise his gun. The camera angle changes to Jimmy's face. It's at that point, when we see like the close-up of his face, that we really see that cool and eerie effect, that daguerreotype effect on his eyes. We also see the stains on his face, like we said before. Could be dirt, could be rot from his decaying corpse. So him and Gary continue to circle each other as Sally tries to cautiously sneak her way over to Jillian. Jimmy shakes his head and clicks his tongue to Sally as a warning not to get any closer to her sister. Sally stops in her tracks. Jimmy turns his attention back to a still speechless Gary's face through this whole scene is like just
Perfect.
like dumbfounded.
He's kind of like clueless through the whole movie.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So Jimmy says to Gary, "What's wrong? Cat got your tongue." Jimmy steps in toward Gary, sticks his ghostly hand into Gary's chest. Gary screams, falls to his knees. So Sally's consoling Jillian at this point. Gary screams through the pain of a ghost hand being in his chest. And for a minute, Jimmy looks like he's getting pleasure out of inflicting this pain on Gary. But the tables turn very quickly as Jimmy seems to have been afflicted by something that falls to the ground. We then see Gary's star badge fall from his pocket and onto the floor. Gary falls to the ground. Jimmy also falls backward, and we can see that he's holding his hand. In the next shot of Gary, he's still on the ground, and we could see the badge on the ground in front of him. So then we see Jimmy holding his hand. He says, he's like, shit. Then we see a close-up on the wound on his hand, and we see that Gary's star badge has kind of like a melting effect on Jimmy's ghost flesh.
Yeah.
And also, did you ever notice you could see like he has the ring on in that scene? He has the skull ring on in that scene.
Oh, I never noticed that. No,
I thought when I was like looking back on this scene, I thought it was a wedding ring at first. And I was like, because he's got it on the ring finger, but on his right hand, not on his left hand.
Well, that's even creepier.
Very strange that he had that ring on in that scene. And that was after the toad burped up the ring. How did he get it back if the toad burped it up?
Yeah, because Gary picks it up and he puts it in a handkerchief and puts it in his pocket and he walks away.
Yeah, Gary took it.
Yeah.
Ghost Jimmy has it. He still has it.
Okay.
I don't know if that was a plot hole or what, but I'm like, ooh, interesting. So Jimmy's holding his hand. We see a close up. He's got the melting, like a star melted into his palm, which is weird that a physical object can inflict a spiritual entity as if it were human flesh, right?
I'm also curious, I know you're going to say this shortly, but his reflection that he sees later on, we know like the star is like a powerful symbol, especially for pagans and witches. But do you think it was seeing his own reflection that he kind of fucked off?
Yeah, I think you might be right, because touching the star didn't make him fuck off.
Right.
But once he looked at the star, that's when he was like, oh shit.
And
right?
do you think, like, in the book, he has a little more of, like, he can do supernatural things, move things around. Does he know, like, how did he know he could put his hand into Gary's chest and hurt him like that?
Right.
I know it's a movie, but, like, I'm going back to Patrick fucking Swayze having to generate all that energy as a ghost just to do one little thing.
Right.
So that's where my ghost information comes from.
So maybe the movie Ghost.
Whoopi Goldberg, baby.
I freaking love that movie. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it just like took a lot of energy out of him to, number one, get burned by, the star. And number two, well, first of all, number one, sticking his hand through a chest and like summoning the energy to hurt Gary like that. Mm-hmm. That must have taken up enough energy as it was. But then getting burned by the star and then seeing the star, because Gary believed that it had power, right? Mm-hmm. As Sally told him in the previous scene, it has power because you believe it does.
Yeah.
That's ultimately, I guess, what made Jimmy get the hell out of there. So, I don't know. So Jimmy starts walking toward Gary again until Gary picks up his badge, holds it up to ward off Jimmy's stank-ass energy. And then for a brief moment, we see Jimmy's ghost reflection in Gary's bags, like we said. But, like, are ghosts supposed to have reflections? Because you get your information from ghosts, but I get my information from Beetlejuice. Because in that movie, when Barbara and Adam get home from dying, they have no reflection when she puts a little horse figurine in the mirror. I'm like, I thought ghosts didn't
I don't know if Patrick Swayze had a reflection, but all the other shit, like, he tends to get into is what I was commenting on. But that's usually ghosts and vampires
don't have reflections. Right. Yeah, so what the hell, practical magic? Like, why can Jimmy see his reflection?
Do you think it was because he had possessed Jillian for a little while that he maybe gained some of her humanity? Not like in a good way, but he had just enough of whatever she had to allow him to see with those daguerreotype eyes his own body.
Right, maybe. So many theories, so many theories.
Yeah.
So yeah, we see his reflection for a brief moment before he explodes into a cloud of smoke and dissipates into thin air. So that's basically that whole scene. But then I had an observation, because we only see Jimmy's actual ghost like 2 times in the movie. The one is in that scene with Gary, like that we just talked about. But the other one is the scene in which Kylie sees Jimmy out in the garden under the roses earlier in the film. But did you notice that there's no daguerreotype effect here? We see Jimmy through the window pane as if we are seeing him through Kylie's eyes, but through her eyes, Jimmy appears to have normal skin tones. His clothes don't look stained. He's not rotting. He looks more human-like than the dark entity that the adults saw in the scene that followed. So do you think that's because we're seeing him through a child's eyes, and like maybe she's seeing him more in like a pure form, because children tend to see like more of the good in people? They haven't experienced much disappointment in people in the world, so they tend to be less jaded. So I'm wondering if that reasoning is what contributed to Jimmy's apparition or ghost looking more normal from Kylie's perspective than the creepy daguerreotype effect that is given to him later on when the adults have to deal with his stank ass. So what do you
I can totally absolutely see that, and that it was obscured by the window a little bit, but her innocence and her being able, at least in the books, to see auras. I think she even senses him in the book. But anyway, we have a Jimmy episode coming up. It's just weird we did this one before the Jimmy actual episode, but
but we're gearing up to it because he's coming up soon, right? He's coming up very soon.
But I think you're onto something with her. Through a child's eyes, he is himself. As in real
more human like, I guess. And maybe he didn't want to scare her off as much. Maybe he just like was trying to like give a little warning but not freak her out too much. Like I don't know. Because Jimmy does kind of have like a playful kind of spirit, even though he's a dickbag. Like
he's a mischief maker.
Right.
He's like a Loki character.
The scene where he kidnaps the girls in the car ride, like even in the car ride, yeah, he's supposed to be this villain, but he's kind of like an idiot. Like, you know, he's then he's got to get out of the car to pee, and he's like flipping his keys and like singing a song, and like it's just like, is this guy's a joke as a villain? Like
he's like a Chad.
So he's
a Transylvanian Chad.
He's a oh my god! T-shirt now. Transylvanian Chad. Hashtag Jimmy Angelov.
Yeah, just Jimmy, just Jimmy's face. Our listen now for this episode.
I love it. So that was the only other sighting of Jimmy's apparition throughout the movie. So his presence it is strong throughout the movie. However, most of that is attributed to the presence of random things like toads and the roses growing overnight and out of season, the tequila bottle showing up on the porch, his boots coming up through the ground. But we only see the daguerreotype in that one scene. And it's such a cool effect. Like, I can understand why they wanted to spotlight it and use it sparingly. Like, if an effect is overdone, it gets cheesy, you know? So I can understand why they contained it to the one scene.
It's almost more magical if you only see it for that slight amount of time. Yeah. And the close-ups of his face, his eyes have like almost like a marble like appearance. They're like opaque and white. They look like full moons almost. They have that luminescence behind them. Yeah. And that, I think, was what Griffin was going for when he was describing, like, we were looking at all the eyes of these children and how it's such a short amount of time that they're burst with the flash of the camera, but they're encapsulated in that photo forever. And that is the only time they probably could ever had that photo, is because the child was sitting still. And it's so sad.
Yeah, it's horrible. Horrible.
Mortality rate, baby.
Yeah. There's this play, not a play, but there's like, did I tell you about Sleep No More in New York? It's like kind of like an immersive experience. It's like Shakespeare meets Alfred Hitchcock. It's so strange. It's like a 5-story warehouse in New York City, and it's like an immersive experience. You go in and like you can walk around this warehouse. Every floor is like a different scene, like room to room is all different scenes. You can interact with the actors, but you can't talk. You got to wear a mask. It's like really voyeuristic, really creepy. There's one room in that warehouse. It's like set up like a mortician's room, or office, or I guess storefront, I guess you can say. And when you go in, there's a little book on like one of the tables in there, and you can flip through it, and it's all dead children, like portraits of children, like as if they were alive, like the daguerreotype kind of style. And this, like talking about this made me like think of that, because it's so off-putting, like when you go to like into that theater experience and you see that there, it's like the whole show is very, very macabre and morbid and super creepy. But I was just like so chilling, just flipping through that book and seeing all those portraits. I was like, okay, I need to leave this room.
You've seen it before too. That's incredible. Was this immersive experience like jump scares or anything, or was it more like an artistic expression?
It's not a haunted house. It's more, like definitely like a lot of interpretive dance, silence. You can't talk. You got to wear a mask.
Is there music or anything?
There's like atmospheric kind of sounds and stuff like that, and they do make use of some like old kind of I guess 1930s type old-timey kind of music.
Cool.
In some of the scenes,
like phonograph records.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a whole like, I saved a Spotify playlist after I like went to sleep no more, and sometimes I just listen to that playlist just to get me in like the spooky kind of mood. I'll send you that playlist. It's awesome. And if you ever come to New York, it's kind of pricey, but it's worth it. It's worth the experience.
How many times have you gone?
4 or 5 at this point.
Oh my gosh.
That's
awesome.
Like, you don't see the same thing every time. Well, you see this kind of, in essence, you see the same things, but there's different characters that you can follow, and there's like over 20 something.
It's like pick your own adventure.
Exactly. And
cool.
it's really cool. It's wild. I would love to take you if you ever come.
Sure. As long as there's no jump spooky.
No.
Do they have one more question? Do they have like have they had different themes every time you've been there? Is there like a theme thing, or is it kind of the same, but you pick your own person to follow around and you get something different every time?
Yeah, basically that. You pick your own person. It's the same storylines and the same I guess the loops, because every show you get like 3 loops. It's the same loop over and over again, but you have like 3 opportunities to catch the same stories throughout the night. Yeah, but they do have like some like different events and stuff. It's called the Mandalay Bar, and that's basically the staging area like before you go into the quote hotel, because it's called the McKittrick Hotel, and they give you a key card. They give you like a player's card, and they're like, welcome, enjoy your stay.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's freaking awesome.
Cool.
They have absinthe in the lobby, like and everybody's like dressed up in like period piece costumes of like old 1920s or 30s. It's friggin' it's like the coolest, creepiest experience.
I want to do it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I want to do it. We got to find a place that sells absinthe even without the wormwood. And dude, do you want to do the mugwort or not?
Like put it in the absinthe?
No, like burn some
of it. Oh, burn some of it. I'd have to dry it.
You can put it in your oven at like 170 for 2 hours.
So
but
like,
it's too hot to run your oven.
Like
right
a
now.
wand or like loose like incense. How would you want to burn it?
However is easiest to pour.
Are we gonna create a moxibustion? Are we gonna put a towel under the door and hotbox with mugwort?
You get kicked out of the hotel.
Oh my god! But I mean, it's not weed, you know.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what daguerreotype is. Of course, you gave me all the French, so here we go. So it is a French word, and it was the first publicly available photographic process. Daguerreotype also refers to an image created through this process. Invented by Louis Daguerre and introduced worldwide in 1839, it was widely used during the 1840s and 1850s, but almost completely superseded by cheaper and more readily viewable processes by the 1860s. Now, before we get into the process, let's just talk a little bit about Louis Daguerre and who he was, and what led him to invent this method of photography. So Louis-Jacques Mandat Daguerre was a French artist and photographer recognized for his invention of the eponymous daguerreotype process of photography. He became known as one of the fathers of photography. Though he is most famous for his contributions to photography, he was also an accomplished painter, scenic designer, and developer of the Diorama Theatre. Louis Daguerre was born in Comenon, Paris, Vaudois. He was apprenticed in architecture, theater design, and panoramic paintings to Pierre Prévost. I like
Prévost.
Prévost, the first French panorama painter. Exceedingly adept at his skill in theater illusion, he became a celebrated designer for the theater and later came to invent the diorama, which opened in Paris in July 1822. In 1829, Daguerre partnered with Nicephore Niepce, an inventor who had produced the world's first heliograph in 1822 and the oldest surviving camera photograph in 1826 or 1827. Niepce died suddenly in 1833, and Daguerre continued experimenting and evolving the process, which subsequently would be known as Daguerreotype. After efforts to interest private investors proved fruitless, Daguerre went public with his invention in 1839. At a joint meeting of the French Academy of Sciences and the Académie des Beaux-Arts on the 7th of January of that year, the invention was announced and described in general terms, but all specific details were withheld. Under assurances of strict confidentiality, Daguerre explained and demonstrated the process only to the Academy's perpetual secretary Francois Arago, who proved to be an invaluable advocate. Members of the Academy and other select individuals were allowed to examine specimens at Daguerre's studio. The images were enthusiastically praised and nearly miraculous, and news of the Daguerreotype quickly spread. Arrangements were made for Daguerre's rights to be acquired by the French government in exchange for lifetime pensions for himself and Niepce's son Isidore. Then, on the 19th of August, 1839, the French government presented the invention as a gift from France, quote, free to the world, and complete working instructions were published. In 1839, he was elected to the National Academy of Design as an honorary
Academician?
honorary academician. Daguerre died from a heart attack on the 10th of July, 1851, in Bar-sur-Marne, 7 miles from Paris. A monument marks his grave there, and Daguerre's name is one of the 72 names inscribed on the Eiffel Tower.
Wow.
That's amazing.
So the development of the daguerreotype. In the mid-1820s, prior to his association with Daguerre, Niepce used a coating of bitumen of Judea. What the hell was that? To make the first permanent camera photographs. The bitumen was hardened where it was exposed to light, and the unhardened portion was then removed with a solvent. A camera exposure lasting for hours or days was required. Niepce and Daguerre later refined this process, but unacceptably long exposures were still needed. Bitumen of Judea is a naturally occurring asphalt that has been put to many uses since ancient times. So I guess that was used like in the process.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah. So after the death of Niepce in 1833, Daguerre concentrated his attention on the light-sensitive properties of silver salts, which had previously been demonstrated by Johann Heinrich Schultz and others. For the process, which was eventually named the daguerreotype, he exposed a thin silver-plated copper sheet to the vapor given off by iodine crystals, producing a coating of light-sensitive silver iodide on the surface. The plate was then exposed in the camera. Initially, this process too required a very long exposure to produce a distinct image, but Daguerre made the crucial discovery that an invisibly faint, latent image created by a much shorter exposure could be chemically, quote, developed into a visible image. Upon seeing the image, the contents of which are unknown, Daguerre said, "I have seized the light! I have arrested its flight!"
Oh my God, that's awesome.
The latent image on a daguerreotype plate was developed by subjecting it to the vapor given off by mercury heated to 75 degrees Celsius. The resulting visible image was then, quote, fixed, made insensitive to further exposure to light by removing the unaffected silver iodide with concentrated and heated salt water. Later, a solution of the more effective hyposulfite of soda, now known as sodium thiosulfite, was used instead. This sounds like a very involved process.
This is a science lesson.
Just to get a picture.
75 degrees Celsius sounds hot.
Yeah.
That sounds really hot.
Hot. The resultant plate produced an exact reproduction of the scene. The image was laterally reversed, as images in mirrors are, unless a mirror inverting prism was used during exposure to flip the image. To be seen optimally, the image had to be lit at a certain angle and viewed so that the smooth parts of its mirror-like surface, which represented the darkest parts of the image, reflected something dark or dimly lit. The surface was subject to tarnishing by prolonged exposure to the air and was so soft that it could be marred by the slightest friction, so a daguerreotype was almost always sealed under glass before being framed, as was commonly done in France, or mounted in a small folding case, as was normal in the UK and the US. Daguerreotypes were usually portraits. The rare landscape views and other unusual sightings are now much sought after by collectors and sell for much higher prices than the ordinary portraits. At the time of its introduction, the process required exposures lasting 10 minutes or more, far more for brightly sunlit subjects. So portraiture was an impractical ordeal. Samuel Morse was astonished to learn that daguerreotypes of the streets of Paris did not show any people, horses, or vehicles, until he realized that due to the long exposure times, all moving objects became invisible. Within a few years, exposures had been reduced to as little as a few seconds by the use of additional sensitizing chemicals and faster lenses, such as Petzval's portrait lens, the first mathematically calculated lens. The daguerreotype was the Polaroid film of its day.
Oh my God.
Isn't that awesome? It produced a unique image which could only be duplicated by using a camera to photograph the original. Despite this drawback, millions of daguerreotypes were produced. The paper-based calotype process, introduced by Henry Fox Talbot in 1841, allowed the production of an unlimited number of copies by simple contact printing. But it had its own shortcomings. The grain of the paper was obtrusively visible in the image, and the extremely fine detail of which the daguerreotype was capable was not possible. The introduction of the wet collodion process in the early 1850s provided the basis for a negative-positive printmaking process not subject to these limitations, although it, like the daguerreotype, was initially used to produce a one-of-a-kind image, also known as ambrotypes, on glass and tintypes on black lacquered iron sheets rather than prints on paper. And we talk a little bit more about those more specifically later on. These new types of images were much less expensive than daguerreotypes, and they were easier to view. By 1860, few photographers were still using Daguerre's process. The same small ornate cases commonly used to house daguerreotypes were also used for images produced by the later and very different ambrotype and tintype processes, and the images originally in them were sometimes later discarded so that they could be used to display photographic paper prints. It is now a very common error for any image in such a case to be described as a daguerreotype. A true daguerreotype is always an image on a highly polished silver surface, usually under protective glass. If it is viewed while a brightly lit sheet of white paper is held so as to be seen reflected in its mirror, like metal surface, the daguerreotype image will appear as a relatively faint negative, its dark and light areas reversed, instead of a normal positive. Other types of photographic images are almost never on polished metal and do not exhibit this peculiar characteristic of appearing positive or negative depending on the lighting and reflections.
I want to touch on what you just said. An image on a highly polished silver surface, usually under protective glass. Is that why Jimmy's eyes look so silvery and reflective? Is because this process, the image would have been on a silver plate and
Under a
giving it that luminescence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Possibly.
So there was a competition with Talbot, apparently. Unbeknownst to either inventor, Daguerreo's developmental work in the mid-1830s coincided with photographic experiments being conducted by William Henry Fox Talbot in England. Talbot had succeeded in producing a, quote, sensitive paper impregnated with silver chloride and capturing small camera images on it in the summer of 1835, though he did not publicly reveal this until January 1839. Talbot was unaware that Daguerreo's late partner, Niepce, had obtained similar small camera images on silver chloride-coated paper nearly 20 years earlier. So is William Henry Fox, like, just late to the game? Like,
I guess so.
He's like, I did this first. And they're like, no, Brad, this has been like 20 years old.
And Niepce is like a photography hipster. He's like,
yeah. Oh my God. Yes. With the handlebar mustache. Niepce could find no way to keep them from darkening all over when exposed to light for viewing, and had therefore turned away from silver salts to experiment with other substances such as bitumen. Talbot chemically stabilized his image to withstand subsequent inspection in daylight by treating them with a strong solution of common salt. When the first reports of the French Academy of Science announced that Daguerre's invention reached Talbot with no details about the exact nature of the images or the process itself, he assumed that methods similar to his own must have been used and promptly wrote an open letter to the Academy claiming priority of invention.
wow.
Although it soon became apparent that Daguerre's process was very unlike his own, Talbot had been stimulated to resume his long discontinued photographic experiments. The developed out daguerreotype process was only required an exposure sufficient to create a very faint or completely invisible latent image, which was then chemically developed to full visibility. Talbot's earlier, quote, sensitive paper, now known as salted paper, process was a printed out process that required prolonged exposure in the camera until the image was fully formed. But his later calotype, also known as Talbot type, so Talbot type?
Talbot type.
Like last name? Talbot type. Men name and shit after themselves.
Yeah, right?
Again.
Yeah.
Paper negative process introduced in 1841 also used latent image development, greatly reducing the exposure need and making it competitive with the daguerreotype. Daguerre's agent, Miles Berry, applied for a British patent under the instruction of Daguerre just days before France declared the invention, quote, free to the world. The United Kingdom was thereby uniquely denied France's free gift and became the only country where the payment of license fees was required. This had the effect of inhibiting the spread of the process there, to the eventual advantage of competing processes which were subsequently introduced to England. Antoine Claudet was one of the few people legally licensed to make daguerreotypes in Britain.
So, question: this Talbot dude was okay. So he was from England. So I'm guessing that's why when when they declared the daguerreotype free to the world, I guess in Paris and everywhere else in the world, since Talbot was from the UK, this Daguerre guy, he was like, all right, well, fuck the English because Talbot's English and I don't want them to make use of my invention.
Because he was trying to copy them. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. He was like, well, you can do it your own self and make it free to your country, but you're going to have to pay for my invention.
That's what it sounds like.
Oh, that's so skeezy.
That's so salty.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like talk about petty spaghetti. All right. All right, so Diorama Theaters. So in the spring of 1821, Daguerre partnered with Charles Marie, is it Boutin? With the common goal of creating a diorama theater. Daguerre had expertise in lighting and scenic effects, and Boutin was the more experienced painter. However, can I just say Boutin?
I think it's like bouton.
Bouton?
I think it's like button in French.
However, Boutin eventually withdrew, and Daguerre acquired sole responsibility of the Diorama Theatre. The first Diorama Theatre was built in the Plaque du Château de oh God, why do you give me all the French?
Château d'Eur.
Just say it for me.
Place de Château d'Eur.
There you go. Now the Place de la République in Paris. I suck at French. I never took French in high school.
I didn't either.
All right. You take the French from now on. I'll take the Spanish.
Okay.
The first exhibit opened in 1822 and showed scenes of the Black Forest, the inauguration of the Temple of Solomon, and the Great Fire of Edinburgh. It showed two tableaux, one by Daguerre and one by Boutin. This would become a pattern. Each exhibition would typically have two tableaux.
Dude, you should just read it in a French accent, and then it'll like naturally, you'll just like automatically go into it.
I can't do a French accent. I sound like an idiot.
Like
exhibition would typically have two tableaux, one by each by Daguerre and Boutin. I don't know how to speak French at all. Also, one would be an interior depiction and the other would be a landscape. Daguerre hoped to create a realistic illusion for an audience and wanted audiences to be not only entertained but awe-stricken. The diorama theaters were magnifique in size. I know that was English, but I just had to say magnifique. A large translucent canvas measuring around 70 foot wide and 45 foot tall was painted on both sides. These paintings were vivid and detailed pictures and were lit from different angles. As the lights changed, the scene would transform. The audience would begin to see the painting on the other side of the screen. The effect was awe-inspiring. Transforming impressions, mood changes, and movements were produced by a system of shutters and screens that allowed light to be projected from behind on alternately separate sections of an image painted on a semi-transparent backdrop. That's really cool.
Dude, you look up pictures of this real quick. Guys, if you're near a computer, look up pictures of diorama theaters in the 1900s. These are so cool. So it was backlit over different scenes scenes, and the light would shine in toward the audience through these different scenes that were mechanized behind the stage.
Dude, that reminds me of, do you ever see, was it the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus with like Heath Ledger? I think Johnny Depp is in it.
No, I wanted to though.
It's really cool. It's like, it's neat. It kind of reminds me of this whole like vaudeville type, like
Mhm.
old theater type, like gypsy caravan rolling through town, setting up the theater, traveling caravan, like
Cool.
kind of like that. So, because of their size, the screens had to remain stationary. Since the tableaux were stationary, the auditorium revolved from one scene to another. The auditorium was a cylindrical room and had a single opening in the wall, similar to a proscenium arch. I don't even know what that is, through which the audience could watch a scene. Audiences would average around 350 and would mostly stand, though limited seating was provided. 21 diorama paintings were exhibited in the first 8 years. These included Trinity Chapel in Canterbury Cathedral, Chartres Cathedral, City of Rouen, and Environs of Paris by Bouton, Valley of Sarnen, Harbor of Brest, Holyrood House Chapel, and Roslin Chapel by Daguerre. The Roslin Chapel was known for a few legends involving an unconsuming fire. The legend goes that the chapel has appeared to be in flames just before a high-status death, but has later shown no damage from any such fire. This chapel was also known for being unique in its architectural beauty. Daguerre was aware of both of these aspects of Roslin Chapel, and this made it a perfect subject for his diorama painting. The legends connected with the chapel would be sure to attract a large audience. Interior of Roslin Chapel in Paris opened September 24th, 1824, and closed February 1825. The scene depicted light coming in through a door and a window. Foliage shadows could be seen at the windows, and the way the light's rays shone through the leaves was breathtaking and seemed to, quote, go beyond the power of painting. Then the light faded on the scene as if a cloud was passing over the sun. The Times dedicated an article to the exhibition, calling it perfectly magical.
Oh.
Yeah, the dioramas prospered, earning 200,000 francs a year, a very high profit for the 1830s period. The surging demand led to new diorama theaters opening in London and Berlin. However, in March 8th, 1839, this is ironic, a fire actually did break out in the theater in Paris. Talk about a turn of events.
Full circle.
Full circle moment here, unfortunately. Daguerre urged the firefighters to stop the blaze on the 5th floor, where all his daguerreotype specimens, notes, and equipment were kept. He was more interested in the development of daguerreotypes, and later in August 1839, his daguerreotype specimens were debuted. Later in the 1840s, along with increasing attention to motion photography and cinema, people lost interest in dioramas. The fire along it's like when people like MySpace was all the rage, and then Facebook came along, and like it was
Next
like
big thing.
next big thing. Yeah, like it's crazy. Like even back then, how quickly like people just move on to the next craze, you know?
Totally.
Yeah, so the fire, along with the waning demand of dioramas, caused a decline in the industry. Yeah.
I'm going to pull in 2 pictures right here for our viewers of the diorama so you could get a little idea of what it looks like. All right, so those will be in our notes.
Cool.
So cool. I think, Justina, you just talked about this a little bit earlier, the daguerreotype process, but we'll touch back on it real quick. So, to make the image, the daguerreotypist polished a sheet of silver-plated copper to a mirror finish, treated it with fumes that made its surface light sensitive, exposed it in a camera for as long as was judged to be necessary, which could be as little as a few seconds for brightly sunlit subjects or much longer for less intense lighting, made the resulting latent image on it visible by fuming it with mercury vapor. I have a question about that. Does that
sounds Victorian as fuck.
Like that's like us hotboxing with your mugwort.
They gave no fucks. They're like, oh, mercury, fine. Camphor, fine. Like,
let's put it in a vapor form to boot.
Arsenic, even better. What the
I want that green color on my walls. Give me that arsenic. Oh my God. Okay. So fuming it with mercury vapor, removing its sensitivity to light by liquid chemical treatment, rinsed and dried it, and then sealed the easily marred result behind glass in a protective enclosure. Daguerreotypes are images created on a mirror-like silver surface that can appear positive or negative depending on the angle at which they're viewed. how it is lit, and whether a light or dark background is being reflected in the metal. The surface is delicate and easily damaged. Some tarnish around the edges is normal, just like Jimmy's body. He had like little tarnishes here and there all over his bod, you know?
Yeah.
Jimmy bod. He is so handsome. Other types of Other types of antique photographs are often misidentified as daguerreotypes, but the name correctly refers to only to images created through this specific process, which was in use from the early 1840s to late 1850s. I was going to say I'd be very interested to actually hold a physical daguerreotype photo. Like even if you came across one, say somebody moved into a house and they found a bunch of old photographs and something looked similar, like would you even know if it was or wasn't a
Well,
daguerreotype?
there's an article that I found a little later on. It tells you how to make the distinction between like a real daguerreotype and a fake one.
Hey, awesome. Awesome.
Also, my question is, do you think they put it behind the, like, I know they said it's sensitive and it's like kind of like a very what's the word? What did it delicate? Like it's delicate and it's easily damaged. So I'm sure that's a lot of the reason why they put it behind the glass. But it's also like cured with fucking mercury. Do you think they put it behind the glass so like you're not like being exposed to those fumes just to hang
Right.
a piece of art on your wall? Like,
Right. Or having people touch it, you know,
right.
getting through your pores.
I was watching a girl on YouTube earlier. She like I guess collects antiques, and she had this one book, like an old antique book. I don't remember what it was called, but it was the cover was like bound, it was like green. And it had like, you know, the pretty gold leaf on it and stuff. And I don't know how old it was. Definitely, you know, in the 1800s sometimes. And she was saying how like it was wrapped in plastic, and she said she didn't want to touch it because books back then, some of like the dark green ones, they had arsenic in them.
Right.
So she was handling it with gloves, and she was like doing the research to kind of see like how likely that book had arsenic in the cover.
Wow.
And it's one of the ways you can tell is if the spine starts to brown. Her spine was starting to brown. However, it didn't fall within the dates that they projected for it to be when they typically use the arsenic in the book covers. So
Correct.
she's like, I don't think it's, you know, it has arsenic in it because it's after the projected dates. But she's like, I still want to be careful. So she put it like behind a glass case.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely. And like wrapped in plastic.
right, right. But like if it's like behind a glass case for so long and then you open that case eventually,
Poof.
are you like just like like being exposed to like getting hit like a brick
Yeah.
with those fumes when you open that shit finally?
Yeah,
Oh,
that
man.
green is called Scheele's green.
Oh,
And
yes,
it
that's
is
right.
so popular. It
Yeah.
is like you see the share button at the top of our screen, our
Mhm.
Evernote screen. It was like that. It was like that
Okay.
vivid green color. Everybody
So they
wanted it.
put that in wallpaper, they put that in book bindings, like
Dresses, hats.
oh my God.
Oh my God.
Oh man. All right. So what we got next?
Give me a
What's-
little history.
All right, so since the Renaissance, inventors and artists had searched for a mechanical way to capture visual scenes. The camera obscura, I love that word obscura,
I do
that's so
too.
cool. The camera obscura was used to manually trace what they saw or use optical image for solving problems with perspective, parallax, and color values. A camera obscura optically reduces a real scene in three-dimensional space to a flat rendition in 2 dimensions. In the early 17th century, the Italian physician and chemist Angelo Sala wrote that powdered silver nitrate was blackened by the sun, but did not find any practical application of the phenomenon. The discovery and commercial availability of halogens such as iodine, bromine, and chlorine made silver photographic processes feasible. The daguerreotype was one of these processes, but previous discoveries of photosensitive methods and substances, including silver nitrate and bitumen, based heliography contributed to its development. Niepce experimented with paper silver chloride negatives, while Wedgwood and Schultz's experiments were with silver nitrate. Hippolyte Bayard was persuaded by Francois Arago to wait before making his paper process public. Thomas Wedgwood made the first reliably documented attempt to capture the image formed in a camera obscura in the 1790s, but according to an 1802 account by Sir Humphrey Davy, the images were too faint to produce any effects on the nitrate of silver. Wedgwood's aim was to copy these images, and he experimented with the nitrate of silver, but was unsuccessful. Previous discoveries of photosynthesis. Previous discoveries of photosensitive methods and substances contributed to the development of the daguerreotype, including silver nitrate by Albertus Magnus. We've talked about him before. We've talked about him.
We have talked about him.
Look him up
Dude,
again.
the
Who is he?
Magnus. No, not Magus. See, I did it again. We did. It was probably like two or three episodes ago.
Yeah, we talked
Very
about him.
recent.
Yeah. So, including silver nitrate by Albertus Magnus in the 13th century, a silver and chalk mixture by Johann Heinrich Schultz in 1724, Joseph Niepce bitumen-based heliography in 1822, paving the way for the daguerreotype process.
This episode has quite a few tongue twisters for me. I don't know
Oh,
about you, but it's like my
yeah.
tongue is tripping more so with these first trying to understand this historical process that was so life-changing for these people at the time.
Yeah.
And this subject would be more visual. It would probably be easier to understand with a visual aspect to it, which, sorry, we cannot provide. But I'm still like, what?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Mercury vapors.
Yeah. They're nuts. The Victorians they're a good time.
They're a good time.
Albertus Magnus, just to refresh, he was a Germanic Dominican friar, philosopher, scientist, and bishop, later canonized as a Catholic saint. He was known during his lifetime as a Doctor Universalis and Doctor Expertus, and late in his life, the sobriquet Magnus was appended to his name, whatever that is.
I think it was roses.
Was it roses? We definitely have talked about her. Some Renaissance guy.
I'm pretty sure it was roses. But
Okay.
if we're wrong, somebody tell us.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit more about the daguerreotype process. And this comes in about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5. There's like 5 stages of this process. So we'll give you the rundown on that whole thing now.
It's brought to you in 5 easy steps.
You
Right?
too can practice daguerreotype. We should
Oh my
make it
God.
a daguerreotype infomercial.
You too can practice daguerreotype. All right, so step 1, or process number 1, is polishing. To optimize the image quality of the end product, the silver side of the plate had to be polished to as nearly perfect as a mirror finish as possible. The silver had to be completely free of tarnish or other contaminations when it was sensitized, so the daguerreotypist had to perform at least the final portion of his polishing and cleaning operation not too long before use. In the 19th century, the polishing was done with a buff covered with hide or velvet, first using rotten stone, I don't know what that is, then jeweler's rouge, then lamp black.
What is all this stuff?
I don't know. Do you want to pop that over in another
right.
screen?
Yeah.
And I'll continue reading.
All right.
So originally the work was entirely manual, but buffing machinery was soon devised to assist. Finally, the surface was swabbed with nitric acid to burn off any residual organic matter.
All right. So, rotten stone. Rotten stone, sometimes spelled as one word, like one word rotten stone, also known as Tripoli, is fine powdered porous rock used as a polishing abrasive for metalsmithing and woodworking. It's usually weathered limestone mixed with diatomaceous, amorphous, or crystalline silica. It's kind of like similar to like a pumice stone, I guess you could say, but it's generally sold as like a finer powder and used for a more glossy polish after an initial treatment with coarser pumice powder.
It reminds me of a barkeep's friend or whatever that cleaning stuff is. It's like a powder, barkeeper's friend or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, continue.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So Tripoli particles are rounded rather than sharp, making it a milder abrasive. It's usually mixed with oil, sometimes water, and rubbed on the surface of varnished or lacquered wood. Kind of like, I guess, like barkeeper, like if you're wiping down, I don't know, bar or something, with a felt pad or cloth. Rotten stone is sometimes used to buff stains out of wood. Some polishing waxes contain powdered rotten stone in paste substrate. For larger polishing jobs, rotten stone is mixed with a binder and applied to polishing wheels. It has also been used to polish brass, such that is found on military uniforms, as well as other steels and metals. And it says plates used in daguerreotypes were used polished using rotten stone, the finest abrasive available at the time. So it does mention daguerreotypes in this article.
Oh, wow. Yeah. How about that?
Yeah. It's also used to polish jewelry, and apparently it's in toothpastes.
It's probably so fine and like it just kind of scrapes off. It's probably like an exfoliant, but it's so gentle.
Yes. Yeah. It says it's used as a filler more commonly used as a filler, used in plastics, paint, and in rubber. What was the other one?
Jeweler's Rouge.
All right, so it's used in the iron industry. So it's a very fine powder of ferric oxide. It's also called red rouge or simply rouge, maybe the Moulin Rouge.
Ooh.
It is used to put the final polish on metallic jewelry and lenses, and historically used as a cosmetic. Rouge cuts more slowly than some modern polishes, such as cerium oxide, but is still used in optics fabrication and by jewelers for the superior finish it can produce. When polishing gold, the rouge slightly stains the gold, which contributes to the appearance of the finished piece. It's sold as a powder paste laced on polishing clothes or a solid bar with a wax or grease binder. Other polishing compounds are also often called rouge, even when they do not contain iron oxide. Jewelers remove the residual rouge on jewelry by the use of ultrasonic cleaning. Products sold as stropping compound are often applied to a leather strop to assist in getting a razor edge on knives, straight razors, and any other edged tool.
Interesting.
So, yeah, and then what was that other one?
Lamp black.
Lamp black. Isn't that a paint color?
It is.
Lamp black is what it was traditionally produced by collecting soot from oil lamps. Is that why it's called lamp black?
Hey.
Holy shit.
They're so on the nose about things sometimes.
I know. Dude, I never even thought, like, why would that be called lamp black? But that makes so much sense. Yeah, it's just common black pigment traditionally produced from charring organic materials such as wood or bone. It appears black because it reflects very little light in the visible part of the spectrum. With an albedo? Albedo is the fraction of sunlight that is diffusely reflected by a body. Interesting. Okay.
Libido?
A libido near zero. The actual libido varies depending on the source material and method of production. It's known by a variety of names. So yeah, that's lamp black.
That's awesome. Cool.
Yeah. All right, so sensitization. In darkness or by the light of a safe light, the silver surface was exposed to halogen fumes. More freaking fumes.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, only iodine fumes from iodine crystals at room temperature were used, producing a surface coating of silver iodide. But it was soon found that a subsequent exposure to bromine fumes greatly increased the sensitivity of the silver halide coating. Exposure to chlorine fumes, or a combination of bromine and chlorine fumes, could also be used. A final refuming with iodine was typical.
So, is this our last one? No, we have a few more. So, exposure. The plate was then carried to the camera in a light, tight plate holder, withdrawing a protective dark slide or opening a pair of doors in the holder exposed the sensitive surface within the dark camera, and removing a cap from the camera lens began the exposure, creating an invisible latent image on the plate. Depending on the sensitization, sanitization. The sensitization chemistry used, the brightness of the lighting, and the light concentrating power of the lens, the required exposure time ranged from a few seconds to many minutes. After the exposure was judged to be complete, the lens was then capped and the holder was again made light tight and removed from the camera.
So then we're going to get into the development.
Real quick. This just sounds like our more modern, 35 millimeter film. Like you don't open the back of the camera to the light, because then all your images are ruined, right? And if you're in a dark room exposing your images, the safe lights are the only thing that are on. Usually they're kind of like red tinted, right? So it makes total sense. It's the same thing, 200 years later.
Did you ever take a photography class at art school?
I did.
Yeah, me too. Dude, do you remember? Okay, well, obviously, like in the photography class, like that was before, well, I know we're really aging ourselves. Well, I'm aging myself here. Digital wasn't like, it was kind of starting to become a thing when I was in art school. It was a manual photography class with the 35 millimeter film. And you had to go into the dark room and unload your film in the fucking dark. You can't see a thing that you're doing, and you can't use any light or it ruins the shit. Or you could do it outside, like, of the dark room, but they gave you like this little like jacket sleeve or whatever, and you put your camera.
Oh my God, you're right. I forgot all about those.
And you can do it in that little sleeve, but like you still can't see what the fuck you're doing. So it still doesn't matter. Like you gotta know where your buttons are, and
I gotta ask you, because I like the smell. Do you remember the smell of the chemicals?
Vaguely.
Okay. I really liked it. I thought it smelled good.
Very faint memory.
But yeah, that was a really fun class. I liked, because it's such a specific chemical process you have to do. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was awesome.
It was a lot of fun. I did enjoy it. I think my parents probably still have some of my old photo prints in the attic somewhere, or like they're laying around somewhere.
Dude,
But
I'll share mine. If you find yours, I'll share mine because I have mine still.
I might have a few. I might have a couple that I have laying around, but I gotta dig through shit. All right, so we're getting into the development, which is actually kind of what we were just talking about, right? So the latent image was developed to visibility by several minutes of exposure to the fumes given off by heated mercury in a purpose-made developing box. Is that kind of like what we were talking about, like doing something in a like getting the film out in the box so you don't fuck up the
Yes,
exposure?
yeah. Did you have to hang your negative strips in like this case, like a cabinet closet for a certain amount of time? You had to time it. And I
don't
think the
remember.
cabinet closet was filled with fumes. Guys, this was so long ago. Like,
Yeah.
I don't remember how to
Mine was at
develop
least
photography, but I do
20 years.
remember having to hang them like in a box.
I don't remember having. I remember like having the actual print of the like the photo paper and putting it into those little like flat trays with the
Mm-hmm.
chemicals. I remember that. I don't remember much about the actual film.
Mm-hmm.
Like getting like once you I got it out of the camera, I don't remember what the fuck we did.
I don't remember what the fuck.
I don't remember the fuck. Yeah. That was an elective class. I didn't it was not a requirement, thank God, because I don't think I was that good at it.
No?
I kind of just like it was fun, but I don't think I was like amazing at photography. Like
It is
as far
fun.
as like setting up the shots and like being creative with the shots, like part I loved, but
Mhm.
like if I had to actually like develop film to get my pictures, I was like,
Mhm.
this is not for me. It's a lot of work.
Ours was black and white. Was yours black and
Mhm.
white or color?
Yeah, it was also black and white, but there was also like a process we could do to add color to it, but I don't remember
Oh,
what that was. I just remember that I was able to add like color to some of my black and white photos.
freaking
I don't
cool.
remember how I did it though. Uh, so yeah, so the fumes given off heated mercury in a purpose-made developing box. The toxicity of mercury was well known in the 19th century, but precautionary measures were rarely taken.
I
Clearly, the
bet.
Victorians did not give a shit about safety.
Safety.
Today, however, the hazards of contact with mercury or and other chemicals traditionally used in the daguerreotype process are taken more seriously, as is the risk of release of those chemicals into the environment. In the Becquerel variation of the process, look that up, Christina,
Thank
published in 1840 but very rarely used in the 19th century. The plate, sensitized by fuming with iodine alone, was developed by overall exposure to sunlight passing through yellow, amber, or red glass. The silver iodide, in its unexpected condition, was insensitive to the red end of the visible spectrum of light and was unaffected, but the latent image created in the camera by the blue, violet, and ultraviolet rays color sensitized each point on the plate proportionally so that this color filtered sun bath intensified it to full visibility, as if the plate had been exposed in the camera for hours or days to produce a visible image without development. Becquerel daguerreotypes, when fully developed and fixed, typically take on a somewhat bluish hue. The image quality may not be as magnificently sharp as daguerreotype developed using mercury vapor, although modern photographers pursuing daguerreotype tend to favor the Becquerel process due to the hazards and expense of working with mercury. So Becquerel seems like a safer method, but can you tell us what exactly that is?
Sure, a little bit about it. It is named after Alexandre Edmond Becquerel, and Edmond was a French physicist who studied the solar spectrum, magnetism, electricity, and optics. He is credited with the discovery of the photovoltaic effect, the operating principle of the solar cell in 1839. He is also known for his work in luminescence and phosphorescence, and he is the son of Anton César and he is one of the discoverers of radioactivity. So in 1839, at the age of 19, experimenting in his father's laboratory, Becquerel created the world's first voltaic cell. In this experiment, silver chloride or silver bromide was used to coat the platinum electrodes. Once the electrodes were illuminated, voltage and currents were generated. Because of this work, the photovoltaic effect has also been known as the Becquerel effect.
Okay. All
Right.
right. So, yeah, the last stage of this process is the fixing. So, why don't you tell us about that?
After development, the light sensitivity of the plate was arrested by removing the unexposed silver halide with a mild solution of sodium thiosulfate. Daguerre's initial method was to use a hot saturated solution of common salt. Gilding, also called gold toning, was an addition to Daguerre's process introduced by Hippolyte Fizeau in 1840. It soon became part of the standard procedure to give the steely gray image a slightly warmer tone. What kind of colors could you put on your photography?
I remember I did a photo of like my purple guitar. I think I was actually able to
Okay.
put purple into it. I don't
Okay.
remember. Yeah, I gotta dig those out.
Okay. Okay, so adding this gave the steely gray image a slightly warmer tone and physically reinforced the powder-like silver particles of which it was composed. A gold chloride solution was pooled onto the surface and the plate was briefly heated over a flame, then drained, rinsed, and dried. Without this treatment, the image was as delicate as the dust on a butterfly's wing.
Ooh,
Very cool.
that is
Awesome.
cool. But again, this process is very extensive, and it sounds like you have to have a lot of patience, and also, did you hear that?
Yeah.
Punky's probably fucking with shit. A lot of patience and also some scientific knowledge. Like you gotta know what chemicals you're fucking with because you could blow yourself up or just like inhale some shit that just knocks you out for good.
You just pass out for a few hours.
Or forever.
Oh my God.
What the fuck?
I know. Yeah, it's a
So
very
dangerous.
scary time. Like just the amount of invention that like trial and error.
Yeah.
You and I now here today looking at each other through a computer screen.
Bizarre.
It's so crazy.
Right? Bizarre after like seeing the origins of, how images were collected via apparatus.
Obscuras.
Obscurus.
Cool.
Dude, I am so stoked to get into the ghost shit. I was like, can we get through the science stuff so we can get to the ghost shit?
Last little bit, right?
Yeah. So here are some ways to identify an actual real daguerreotype. Because as we talked about, there are a lot of replicas, a lot of fakes out there. People trying to replicate the look and the style and aesthetic of one, but they might not be the real deal.
Charlatan.
So this is how you can identify a real daguerreotype. First of all, the case. Daguerreotype images are very delicate and easily damaged, so they always come in protective cases, often made of leather and lined with silk or velvet. Next is the plates. They were made on highly polished silver plates, depending on the angle at which you viewed them. They could look like a negative, a positive, or a mirror. The tarnish. If exposed to the air, the silver plate will tarnish. Though they were sealed under glass, it is very common to find characteristic signs of tarnishing around the edges of the daguerreotype. Even though it's under that glass, the edges are often, they still tarnish, even though they're being protected by the glass. And lastly, the size. Daguerreotypes were produced in a range of sizes, but most portraits are quite small, usually around 2 to 3 inches.
Pretty small. Yeah. And this link that Justina just read from blog.scienceandmediamuseum.org, there's a few examples, but I'm sure if you just typed in daguerreotype, all these little cases, they look about like the size of a wallet or like something you could fit in your pocket or your shirt pocket inside. And like the gold frames around the pictures, like some are oval, some have like clipped corners. They're very beautiful, but it looks just like almost like a cigarette case.
Or a
Right?
locket, right? Like how you open a locket
bigger.
and you have the photo in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were really cool cases. So there are some other kinds of photo processes. So why don't you tell us about those?
Okay. The first one is ambrotypes, which you'd mentioned earlier. An ambrotype is a glass plate coated with collodion mixture. Collodion mixture?
Yeah.
Celine Dion mixture.
Celine Dion mixture.
Afterward, dipped in a silver nitrate solution, exposed to light, developed with an iron sulfate-based solution, and fixed with sodium thiosulfate. Although ambrotypes were a cheaper alternative to daguerreotypes, the process was short-lived. Most ambrotypes date between 1854 and 1865. Another type was called tintypes, melanotypes, and ferrotypes. Despite their common name, tintypes are not made of tin. A tintype is a plate of treated iron coated with a Celine Dion mixture. Afterward, dipped in a silver nitrate solution, exposed to light, developed in an iron sulfate solution, and fixed to a potassium cyanide solution.
Oh, wait, what?
Did I read that right? Okay.
Wait, where's yeah, cyanide.
Tin types were popular from the mid-1850s to the mid-20th century. Carte de visite, I don't know, cabinet card or stereoscopic photographs. The term carte de visite, cabinet card, and stereoscope refer to three different popular sizes of mounted paper photographs. Carte de vista photographs are typically 2.5 by 3.5 albumin prints, which used albumin from egg whites to bind the image to the paper and date from the late 1850s to the late 19th century. The
So
cabinet
it seems like they use the albumin like a glue,
it
right?
does, oh yeah, like
You know
egg
how
glue.
like when you like put like egg whites on like a after you bake a cookie, if you want to like put like sprinkles on them or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
The cabinet card began to replace the carte de vista around 1870. Cabinet cards are typically 4.25 inches by 6.5 printer prints and were common in the early 20th century. Stereoscopic cards are two offset paper photo prints mounted alongside one another. When seen through a special viewer, these photographs give the impression of a three-dimensional scene. The format was popular from the 1860s to the early 20th century, although personal post-mortem portraits in stereoscopic form are quite rare, which we're going to talk real deep about the post-mortem portraits here in a minute.
Do you remember, were you too young? I don't know, because I'm an old ass. But do you remember those Viewmaster toys?
Yeah, the
With the
click,
little
click, the next scene, the
slides?
next scene.
Yeah. That's
Totally.
what that kind of reminded me. That
Mhm.
kind of reminds me of that.
And there were more on this site. This was from the University of Michigan. Those are just a few. And we're going to share the link if you want to dig deeper. No pun intended. Get it? We're talking about death.
Talk about
But,
death.
yeah, that's what we have for the history of the daguerreotype photography.
Yeah, dude, this is fascinating.
You're like, let's get to the creep.
I know, I really want to
'Cause
get
I'm a
to
creep.
I'm a creep. So we're going to take a quick break right now. And when we return, we're going to pull a card from the Inner Witch Oracle. And then we're going to get into the spooky spirit and talk about death and the daguerreotype in the Victorian era, postmortem photography, and the supernatural. We're also going to spotlight daguerreotype throughout pop culture. So stay right there. Oh, we'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'm no Sharon Stone, Sydney. Hey, little witches! The Stinas here. If you've been listening to our podcast for a while, you would know how much we love using the Practical Magic Inner Witch Oracle deck by Grounded by the Moon.
And now we want to share the magic of Grounded by the Moon with you, our listeners. Joseph Benitez Egerton, the creator behind Grounded by the Moon, would like to offer this very special 10% off discount to all who wish to experience the magic of his Practical Magic themed tarot and oracle decks.
But that's not all. He also creates other divination tools like tarot workbooks, deck bags and altar cloths, pendulum kits, oil blends, cleansing sprays, smoke wands, teas, and ritual kits.
And let's not forget about his custom handcrafted all-natural soy candles, where every candle is hand-poured and personally infused and charged under the light of the moon. They even come with a crystal.
And did we mention all of the ingredients in the candles are ethically sourced?
All of Joseph's offerings are just so magical. So go visit groundedbythemoon.com and use the coupon code Magnolia Magic for 10% off your entire order at checkout.
That's MAGNOLIA MAGIC. So get your discount today.
Hey, we're the Stinas, and you're listening to the Magnolia Street Podcast. It's a good movie.
I love that movie.
Isn't that Skeet Ulrich also?
Yes.
Skeet Ulrich is in that. All right.
Yeah. And Matthew Lillard.
Mhm.
And did you get my Marco the other day when I was like, Cotton Weary?
Yeah.
And I
You're
was
like, oh,
wait,
Cotton
no.
Mather.
I was like, no, that's the guy from Scream. I meant Cotton Mather, the witch guy. Yeah.
Okay. What's your favorite thing about spooky season?
Probably the cozy sweaters and the candles, like all the fall candles, and just walking into a store and seeing Halloween stuff. It just does so much for like my dopamine levels that I'm just like, it makes me so happy. Why can't this just be all year round?
I know that little crispness in the air. You're like, it's here.
Yeah.
It makes my heart happy.
It's like mid-August every year. The switch just like flips for me.
Mhm.
It's like my body, like the clock, my internal clock. It's like, oh, it's mid-August. It's Halloween. It's Halloween. I know it's still summer,
Yeah.
but in my mind, it's Halloween now.
That was my first tattoo, was the fall leaves. I was like, fall means so much to me. For not being a fall baby, you just like
Neither am I.
gravitate to certain seasons. Like my friend Caitlin's she loves summer. I'm like, but why? But she's such a like beach mermaidy person. You know,
Yeah.
it just fits. But fall for me, I do love the holidays though. They give me all the like warm fuzzies. But
I could do without those.
I really just like the crooner music.
Really?
And like a hot toddy. Yeah, I love like a
Yeah.
Dean Martin or Bing Crosby.
I kind of like the creepy Christmas. Like, you know,
The
like
creepy
the
Christmas.
what's his fucking face? What's his Krampus, like Krampus and like
Yeah.
all that creepy shit.
Mhm, mhm.
Like
I have a Krampus pillow that comes out for the couch and like a little
Love it.
ornament for the tree.
Yeah.
He's
I
awesome.
do love me some flannel though. I do love
Yeah.
me some flannel. All right, I'm ready to pull.
Ready. Okay.
All right.
All right. Mr. Daguerreotype be with us tonight. Stop.
Wait, hold on. Let me.
Ah,
Oh, okay. I'll just go with that one. We got lilacs.
Lilac.
Lilac. And interesting because in the book, that's a symbol of Jimmy, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
There you go. That's the connection. That's all we got for you guys. Okay. That's the only connection I could think of. But the word on this card is enchantment. We've pulled this one before because we did a lilac episode. So you guys, if you guys want to go learn more about lilacs, go listen to our lilac episode because we talked all about them.
21.
Is it 20? Oh yeah, that's the episode where we did the
Billy Zane.
Fan fiction. Yeah,
that was chaos. Yeah.
That was such chaos. So good though. So good. Guys, go listen to that episode. This card, the keyword is enchantment or give in. This says, allow yourself to give in to the temptations around you. Release your concerns and follow your heart's true desire. Whatever is calling to you, whatever you are being drawn to, know that is for a reason. Don't fight it. Instead, give in to the magical enchantments that come your way. Lilacs contain a very strong, almost intoxicating aroma, associated with love, flirtation, and also used for protection. This magical flower will definitely leave you enchanted. When lilac comes into your reading, embrace the magic you're being drawn to because it's for a reason. And the mantra on this card is, I allow myself to embrace that which my inner soul desires. And my inner soul desires fucking Halloween.
Jimmy's desire was to possess the fuck out of his ex-girlfriend.
We're gonna do an episode coming up on ex-boyfriends and curses and all like
that was gonna be so special. It's gonna have a special little twist we can't tell you about just yet, but it's gonna be so cool.
I can't wait to hear your story.
Dude, we got some good stories coming in. Guys, if you have a story, spooky ass story, send it to us and we will share it. I hope it gets here in time. I really don't know the lineup of how long we have. But anyway.
We have a lot of spooky stuff coming up for you guys, so just, don't turn that dial like as a radio station.
Don't change that dial.
Don't click that Spotify button. Or yeah.
Anyway. All right, let's talk about death. Megadeth. Le Mort. In the 19th century, there was a strong desire for remembrance and commemoration, influenced by the Victorian obsession with spirituality and early photography. The introduction of the daguerreotype, a photographic technique of the time, allowed Victorians to capture ethereal images of their loved ones that reflected their attitude towards intimacy and death. During this period, two eerie photographic trends emerged. The Hidden Mothers, which depicted parents shrouded in veils, and post-mortem photography, which captured images of the deceased. Given the high cost of paintings at the time, the daguerreotype provided a more affordable means of honoring and remembering loved ones. During the Victorian era, a popular photographic technique called daguerreotype had a slow processing time, making it difficult to capture images of active children. To overcome this challenge, mothers would kill their kids. No, mothers would hide behind veils and hold their babies or toddlers still during the long exposure process. Older children could be clamped to a chair, which I think we'll talk a little bit more later.
Oh my God.
But infants were too small and needed their parents to hold them. This practice, known as hidden mother photography, resulted in eerie images with veiled figures or only partial appearances of the parents, creating a strange and ghostly effect. Sometimes the parents were discreetly positioned behind objects, giving the impression of a grim reaper-like figure in each photograph.
Dude, the Victorians were like wrong in the head. Like, what made them think this was a good idea?
OG goth, man.
Have you seen these pictures of
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
my
they're
God,
fucking
it's
ghouls.
chilling? Chilling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. During the 19th century, death was a prevalent and accepted part of life, with the average lifespan being around 40 years. The era was marked by a fascination with death, which was fueled by high mortality rates, particularly among children and infants. Because death frequently occurred in the home, it was a shared experience among family members, and it was often seen as a manifestation of God's will.
Gee, I wonder why it frequently occurred in a Victorian home.
Arsenic.
Arsenic,
And the exploding toilets, and
Mercury,
stoves, and
camphor.
stairs.
all the stuff.
Dude, that
Yeah.
episode is fucking banger. Go listen to
Oh,
the Victorian
That
episode.
bottle bacteria that we were talking about, remember that?
Yes, bovine bacteria.
Oh my goodness.
I love our podcast. It makes us so smart.
Or wait, we makes us appear smart. We're not really.
Yeah. As a result, mourning was a visual and tangible process, with post-mortem photography becoming an accepted way to commemorate the deceased. According to Hans Kraus Jr., a collector of 19th and 20th century photography, quote, visual manifestations of mourning, post-mortem photographies most of all, became an accepted memorial practice and were part of the era's mourning process, end quote. Post-mortem photography was also popular in the Victorian era, as Kraus Jr. explains, quote, post-mortem photography consoled the bereaved and memorialized the dead. The photograph was a tangible object that represented the deceased and could be held or worn close to the body. Commissioned by grieving families, postmortem photographs often represented the only visual remembrance of the deceased and were among the family's most precious possessions, end quote. Here the children in these postmortem images look as though they are sleeping, but in reality they are deceased and held up by props or family members. Occasionally the photographer ensured their eyes maintained open or painted them onto their closed eyelids to make them appear as if they were living. More often than not, the photographer was asked to capture one of two poses, a peaceful sleeping image of a loved one or that depicted them vibrant and alive. Not only were these images a deferential remembrance of the deceased, each was often placed with the best clothing, flowers, toys, and jewelry, showcasing the family's wealth and what the deceased individual valued when they were living. Klaus Jr. says postmortem photographs were kept on parlor tables and mantels and in family albums. They were also sent to faraway relatives along with written accounts of the death. As photographs were still a recent invention, not always affordable or widely available, there were limited opportunities to sit for a lifetime portrait, thus commissioning a posthumous image of the departed was especially important. You're saving your money your whole life. That seems it's not frivolous, but it's like a luxury to have your photograph taken.
Mhm.
And it seems like they're kind of wrapping that into the budget of this death, a time to get a good picture of them looking alive that they're able to send to their family and friends.
It was just a part of their death tradition.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like a given. Like when you die, before you get buried, first we got to do a friggin' glamour shoot, like with your dead body.
Oh my God.
Real quick, did you
Glamour shoot.
hear? Did you hear about the that viral picture of the grandma preserved in the family's coffee table?
No, what?
Did you hear about this?
Look
All
that
right.
shit up.
I gotta send you this link. I saw this either on TikTok or something.
What?
But check this. Look at this. In India, this family preserved their grandmother in a resin coffee table.
What the
It-
fuck? Oh my God. Oh my God. Is that her real body?
I don't know. But some people think that this image was manipulated using AI and Photoshop. But
That's insane. Put this in our notes, please.
just the thought of it being real is just so fucking bizarre,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
Crazy.
What is she doing? Cutting a cake?
It looks like she's like, either cutting a cake or like flipping hamburgers. I don't fucking know. Like, what the fuck?
Wow, dude. That's bananas.
It is bananas.
Okay. All right.
Dude, the fucking internet, man. It's a black hole.
All right, tell us a little more history, please.
All right. So the history of postmortem photography, and this article is by Ashanta Jackson, and this article is from November 10th, 2021. So Ashanta says, what does it mean to remember? For some, remembrance means capturing an image, documenting not just a life, but a death. In the 19th century, photographers were often called upon to do postmortem photography, capturing the stillness of the final moment. As Victorian literature scholar Nancy M. West writes, quote, people were more willing to pay a few dollars for a daguerreotype that memorialized a loved one's death than they were to commemorate a marriage or a birth.
Wow.
That's nuts. We have a little more from Nancy West a little later on, but she goes on to say the reason was simple. Death was omnipresent. There were outbreaks of highly communicable and deadly diseases, and, quote, when scientific discoveries shattered conventional religious beliefs, many embraced the medium of photography as a means of counteracting death. If their
Leave it
lives
in.
If their lives were to be tenuous, their image at least could endure. Honoré de Balzac, for example, believed that each image removed a layer of skin from the subject, decreasing their essence of life. Part science, part illusion, a permanent reminder of a temporary moment, early photography had a sort of magic to it, West explains. In the 1840s, she continues, an entire vocabulary developed around the medium, a language that encompassed both fear and delight. Many people considered photography blasphemous, an art that, quote, attempted to outdo a job reserved for the Almighty.
Oh,
end
God.
quote. Some people even thought that photographs were physically dangerous. Well, I mean, they are if you're the photographer using all those fumes and chemicals.
Yeah, true.
The tension between the desire to hold on to the dead and the fear of photography's power likely also increased the demand for images of the deceased. In Britain, for example, the 1850s saw a rise of advertisements for post-mortem photographers and the production of special albums and cases for holding and displaying post-mortem photographs, which is what I was telling you before. Like when I was at the Sleep No More thing, there was like a whole album, like a whole little booklet of these kinds of photos of like dead people.
It sounded like you said sick no more.
Oh, Sleep No More.
Sleep no more. Okay.
Yeah, Sleep No More. So yeah, they have these cases and books holding all these kinds of pictures, according to researchers Liz Stanley and Sue Wise. As photography evolved, more people sought it out as part of the grieving process. As Stanley and Wise point out, it became a way to mourn, helping people come to terms with death. It's kind of like taxidermy in a way. Like I know like rich people, when they like lose their pets, they often get them taxidermied as a means to like have them like permanently, or like their essence or spirit or whatever permanently, around them in their space to feel like they're always there.
Yeah, different ways of remembering people. It just has like transitioned so much over the years. Like we just talked about tattoos also,
Right,
and like
right.
commemorating somebody, putting them physically on your body, whether that's their physical face, like the artist redoing their face, or their handwriting. Like that is the sympathetic magic. You're putting their essence, you're keeping that so close to you.
The tag lock, right?
Yeah. And these people just keep these daguerreotype photographs in those little cases that can fit next to your heart, in that pocket of your jacket, or in your little purse. You keep them forever.
Yeah.
So is that selfish? Like, is that because they're like, oh, we would rather take a picture of you dead and keep that with us than have you have a picture of you at a wedding or like the birth of a child or something like that? Because that's for you. We don't want that. We want to keep your picture.
And also, in essence, if you're keeping that picture of that dead person, is that kind of like not setting their soul free or not like releasing them to the spirit world? That's keeping them kind of earthbound, like that, their energy tied to that tag lock, so to speak.
It sounds like that's what that Honoré de Balzac was kind of saying. Like you have a piece of them that's not letting them go. And this is very reminiscent. We didn't even put in any of the superstitions around the world, like the Aboriginal people feeling the same way, like that. It takes your soul. A photograph of them will take your soul. Going
back to what Rose DeWitt Bucator said, something about like the art, like when she was looking through those paintings, which we talked about in, what was it, the last episode? She was like talking about how the eyes are the window to somebody's soul or something of the sort.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, yeah, like it kind of is. And like Jimmy, spooky eyes, completely chilling, bone chilling.
That's like his cutesy name. Like, hey you doing, spooky eyes?
Spooky. Hey, spooky.
Hey, spooky.
I love that. So yeah, so in some communities, capturing death took on a different meaning. Photographer James Van Der Zee, a Harlem photographer who captured the lives and deaths of the neighborhood's Black community, used his art to document beauty. As literature scholar Carol E. Henderson writes, Van Der Zee's 1978 collection, The Harlem Book of the Dead, which featured his funeral photography from the 1920s, as well as poems and text by poet Owen Dodson and artist Camille Billups, was part of a long line of Black artists using their work to preserve themselves and their families, and their human dignity in the face of overwhelming odds. Van Der Zee's work, Henderson continues, suggests that African Americans have long used death to investigate social injustices and cultural immorality in the past and present. Though it may feel as if postmortem photography is a relic of a bygone era, it is still part of the grieving process for many. Rather than a holdover from an earlier time, Stanley and Wise explain it is part of the human condition, a need to capture a moment where a person is both here and not here, a holding on, and also as a sign of having to let go. And we kind of just said that, right? Like, are you being selfish and not letting them go by holding on to that last image of them as if they were alive? Like,
yeah, putting him in a state of, what's the word? Not denial. Maybe it is denial, where you're like having their last photo where they're actually dead, but make them look alive.
Yeah.
As a means
that
to
is
like
denial. Yeah, like you don't want to believe that person is actually gone.
Right.
Yeah.
All I could think about was James Van Der Beek when you were reading that man's name.
James Van Dawson's Creek.
Yeah.
But like my question is, how like expensive were these photos to be taken back then that they needed to take a photo of their loved one that was dead, but to make them look alive? Like, what was the last photo of that person that they had when they actually were alive that they felt like they needed
if any
to have? Right. So it's just very strange that they feel like they would have to pose them while they're dead as if they were alive. Like, why don't you just celebrate a photo of them from when they were alive? Like, you know,
Victorians love death. They love it.
It's so, I mean, like, yeah. Did they have like mummy viewing parties? Didn't we talk about that in the Victorian episode? So crazy.
They're all about the seance. Exactly what you're saying. And they would surround them with their like belongings. And I really don't think many middle class, lower middle class people would have had any photographs of themselves taken. Not even when they were a baby, unless they died.
All right. So tell us a little bit more about Nancy and Wes, because you said we were going to talk about her again. We talked a little bit about her before. So what is this article?
Yeah. So this is from Jester.com, and this is called Camera Fiends, Early Photography, Death, and the Supernatural. This was 37 pages.
Holy shit.
So check out our links if you want to read the whole thing. I just went through and I pulled out the good bits. So it says, this intense confusion of image and afterlife has always haunted photography, to the extent that the photographic image has persistently occupied an uneasy space between the worlds of science and magic, generating from even its modern viewers a naive and superstitious response. On one hand, the invention emerged right out of materialism. On the other, it seemed ephemeral and inexplicably potent. Its ambivalent metaphysics meant that photography possessed a powerful hold over the Victorian imagination. Early metaphors portrayed the photograph as an intelligible presence with magical properties, evidenced by such phrases as, quote, mirror with a memory, and the pencil of nature. I like that one.
Huh.
Another one was fix the shadow ere the substance fade. That's kind of a mouthful. In fact, the entire vocabulary developed around the medium during the 1840s and 1850s that was once familiarized and alienating, a strange and potent language of animated portraits, shadows, haunted spaces, unconscious desires, and talismanic properties. Such rhetoric had its origins in a number of other languages. In Protestant poetics, with the emphasis on the dangerous, quote, temptations of imagery, for example, or in literary romanticism, obsession with vision and blindness. Photography's invention thus generated complex and overwrought subgenre of ekphrastic writing?
What's that?
writing the verbal representation of a visual representation.
Oh.
So ekphrastic poetry has come to be defined as poems written about works of art. Yeah, however, in ancient Greece, the term ekphrastis was applied to the skill of describing a thing with vivid detail. This sounds like we are doing ekphrastis work with putting music to a work of art, practical magic. It's
Okay.
poetry. Music is poetry, right?
It's poetry. Yes,
Cool.
100%.
So it's not surprising that post-mortem photography had its corollary in another freakish moment in photographic history, namely the phenomenon of, quote, spirit photography. The term, oh, dude, do you want to go get our aura photographs done? I know you can do that in
Yes.
Salem. Have you had that done?
No, I have not, but I have so much on spirit photography a little later.
Sweet. I want to get my aura picture taken.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Your aura is purple. It's purple.
The term refers to the practice of taking photographs in order to produce visual evidence of ghosts, spirits, and other supernatural elements. With the flourishing of spiritualism during the 1860s in England and America, photography became the method by which those who believed in an afterlife could actually offer proof of their convictions. Over the next several decades, mediums, photographers, and even scientists experiment with the resurrecting art. While hundreds of articles on the subject appeared in journals ranging from Harper's to the British Journal of Photography, the practice peaked in England during World War I as the countless deaths of British soldiers stimulated a renewed interest in mysticism. Cherished as a token of affection, the photograph comforted the bereaved by providing, for the first time, an affordable and unquestionably lifelike memento mori. Paradoxically, Roland Barthes describes it as a cunning disassociate of consciousness from identity, the advent of myself as other. The French historian Jules Michelet anticipated Barthes' observant upon seeing his portrait for the first time in 1850. And this is a quote. It says, "The daguerreotype. It saddens me not to see myself thus, with respect to form, but to see myself a corpse, without my inner fire or spirit." As a practice that literally offered a return of the dead, spirit photography merely returned to its viewers what they had long since desired of the photographic image. On the other hand, it solidified a nearly century's worth of apprehensions about technological image making. Predictably, daguerreotypes' capabilities also elicited fears about blasphemy. In 1840, several German theologians wrote an essay in the Lapsjiger, Ständiger. I'm not German, I don't know.
Lapshidiger,
In which they denounced the invention as a megalomaniac enterprise that attempted to outdo a job reserved for the Almighty, which we touched on.
Yeah.
And this is a quote. It says, "The wish to capture evanescence."
Evanescence.
Reflections is not only impossible, as it has been shown by thorough German investigation, but the mere desire alone, the will to do so, is blasphemy. God created man in his image, and no man-made machine may fix the image of God. End quote. Another, much more tremulous voice echoed that response nearly 15 years later. Quote, "Ah, what a sad expression," wrote one viewer. "There is something about the daguerreotype that bespeaks a hand not of this world, surely to punish us for penetrating her mysteries. Nature touches us with the shadowy hand of death in revealing them."
So eerie.
Fucking metal!
Fucking Victorians. Speaking of Victorians, we're gonna get into more Victorian shit here. This article is called "Beyond Victorian Death Photos, Masks, Mourning, and Memento Mori." And this article is from allthat'sinteresting.com. So this says, people in the Victorian era mourned deeply after the death of a loved one, and this mourning certainly wasn't limited to photos. It was common for widows to wear black for years after their husbands died. Some even clipped hair from their dead loved ones and preserved the locks in jewelry. Again, tag locking, sympathetic magic. They're holding on. That is kind of selfish, like not to let their souls go. But anyway, as if that wasn't dark enough, Victorians often surrounded themselves with memento mori, or reminders of death. The literal meaning of that phrase is, quote, "remember you must die," end quote. To Victorians, this phrase meant that the dead should be honored and that the living should never forget their mortality. Did I tell you I think we've talked about this before. me and Avi went to this tile factory that was close by the mansion of the where we got married, our venue. And the dude that created this tile mansion, there was his writing quarters that we were able to go in and see, and on his writing desk he had a skull on there, and under it there was like a sign that said memento mori, and that was like a reminder for him to every day be creative, every day put work into his craft, because you only have so long here to get out all the projects you want to get out in your lifetime before you ultimately meet your maker.
Yeah.
So it's
I don't remember what episode that was in. That feels like, I feel like that was an early on epispisode.
Yeah, it was
I don't
early.
know what we're talking about, but I do remember that.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
incredible.
gonna try to find that picture. Maybe I'll post it for our after hours for this episode.
What was his name? Do you remember the tile maker's name?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Because it was in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, the Font Hill Castle. Mercer, I think his name was. Henry Chapman Mercer. He was an American archaeologist and tile maker, and he also wrote a few books, I want to say. Yeah, he did a lot of writing in his day too. So yeah, I just thought that was so cool, like to go and see his writing quarters and see that skull with that little Victorian reminder, like we remember you must die, like get all the shit you need to get out of your system, and like don't waste time while you're here. If you have something you love to do, pursue it. And that's the message for everybody listening today. Just go for whatever it is you want in life, because life is not permanent and you're gonna die.
I know. Dude, this stresses me out. So I was thinking the other day, like I think about this a lot. I'm like, oh man, I hope I don't come back as this, or oh man, I hope I don't come back as that. And I always have to remind myself, like, you are not going to have the same consciousness. Like it's not even going to be a worry. It's just going to be life. But the amount of times I think about that throughout the week is crazy. Like I'm like, so hashtag blessed, and I don't know if that stresses anybody else out to think of, because like you kind of can feel your past lives still, like you're drawn to certain things, or you have memories of certain things, and
or if you have a fear, an inexplainable fear, like an irrational fear of something you don't know why you're afraid of it, probably because that's maybe contributed to your death in a past life, and it's traumatic that you went through that, and now you're kind of like reliving it, but not really. Like I am super claustrophobic.
Oh, really?
Tight spaces. I must have gotten buried alive in a past life.
Oh man.
I fucking, like, if somebody is like on top of me, like sometimes Avi like play wrestles with me and I'm just like, get off me, I can't breathe.
Yep.
I can't do it. I can't.
That's funny.
Anyway, so okay, we're gonna get into death masks now, because I didn't know what the fuck I've never heard of this. This is fascinating to me. So the practice of creating death masks was another way the Victorians remembered the dead. According to the 19th century collector Lawrence Hutton, a death mask, quote, must of necessity be absolutely true to nature, end quote. To capture the likeness of a dead person, a mask maker would spread this is so fucking morbid. A mask maker would spread oil over the face before plastering over the person's features. Sometimes the process left a seam down the middle of the face, or exaggerated beards and mustaches since their hair was slicked down. The Victorians did not invent death masks. The practice actually dates back to ancient worlds, but they were notable for their obsession with creating and possessing the masks. Families placed death masks of loved ones atop mantles. Some doctors offered to make death masks after pronouncing a notorious criminal dead. And the booming phrenology industry, a pseudoscience that studied bumps on the skull to explain mental traits, used death masks as a teaching tool.
The only death mask that, like, visually I remember, I had to Google it because I was like, I want to see what these other ones look like, because the only one I know is like the gold death mask of Agamemnon in King Tutankhamun, like having that casket, not sarcophagus, having his face on it, the features, the representation of their death mask, but having that on your mantle.
Well, I guess it's kind of like, if you think about the Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos, the Mexican culture, like they have those altars called ofrendas, and that's where they kind of like put all of the I guess memorabilia from the people who they love to have passed on, like aside from all their favorite foods and liqueurs and spirits. maybe some cultures put on the death masks on these altars that, like, would honor their loved ones who have passed on. We talked about the post-mortem photos, right?
Yeah.
Dead people getting their pictures taken. Some of those are actually fake. Some of the ones we see might actually not even be real dead people. So there's this, I guess, conspiracy, fake Victorian post-mortem photos. So today, some Victorian death photos shared online are actually fakes, or they're photographs of the living mistaken for the dead. Take, for example, a commonly shared image of a man reclining in a chair, and you can see, if you click on this little link that says are actually fakes, I think this photo is in that link from the Atlas Obscura. So the photographer posed a dead person with his arms supporting the head, many captions claim. But the photograph in question is a picture of the author Lewis Carroll, the writer of Alice in Wonderland.
Oh my God.
Taken years before his death. Mike Zone, the owner of Obscura Antiques in New York, offers a handy rule of thumb when studying Victorian death photos. He says, as simple as it sounds, the big general rule is if they look alive, they're alive. Although some Victorians tried to breathe life into photographs of the dead, with the addition of color on the cheeks, for example, the vast majority of them simply sought to preserve the image of a lost loved one. While many of us couldn't imagine doing this today, it's clear that this practice helped the Victorians with their grief during a time of great strife.
Yeah, this article from Atlas Obscura was titled "Clearing Up Some Myths About Victorian Postmodern Photographs," and the ones they have there, like the very first one, that guy definitely fucking looks alive. He's looking right at that. He's looking right at the camera. He still has the twinkle in his eye. And I hope we go more into the metal framing, like the chairs they were using. But if we don't, this link will be in our show notes. But they had like tripods basically to hold up, like if the person was sitting in a chair, they could attach this little bracket to the back of their head that would keep their head upright, so it wasn't flopping all around. It's called a posing stand. So I'm not sure if we get into more of that later, but check out this link if you get a chance, guys.
Yeah, I just had a thought real quick. Okay, I don't know if you're an Incubus fan, but they have a song called Look Alive. Listen to these lyrics, because this just like popped out at me when we were just talking about, like, are they dead? Are they not dead? But the whole point of a postmortem photo is to look alive. This song, the lyrics some of the lyrics of the song, it says, a picture says with sight what we can't say with words, but you've been walking eyes to feet in dark sunglasses. A picture will survive, so smile and look alive. The camera lens is opening, the wide angle's yours. Isn't that
that's so
strange?
cool.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, that's perfect.
That's the chorus of the song. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
really
So
cool.
it's like look alive, smile and look alive. That's the chorus. But
I like how it's like the camera shutter is opening, just like we talked about them having to take that cover off the camera.
I'm wondering if Brandon Boyd was inspired by postmortem photography when he wrote this. How cool would that freaking be? If it all just came full circle, if it's all, exactly.
This next one is also from All Things Interesting, and it's called Inside the Haunting History of Spirit Photography. After the Civil War, opportunistic, quote, spirit photographers claimed to conjure the spirits of lost loved ones on camera, sparking an eerie trend in America and Victorian England. Starting in the 1850s, early photographers claimed to capture ghosts on camera. Of course, they weren't really ghosts. Photographers used tricks like double exposure to make these images appear. But to someone hoping to connect with a lost loved one, they were convincing enough. Which, fuck, charlatan!
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In the gallery included in this article, the link will be in our show notes, you can see how early photographers like William Mumler and William Hope produced these spirit photos and how they lay the foundation for future generations of ghost photographers. As camera technology emerged in the 19th century, early images often captured something strange, a ghostly figure. This was because taking a photograph required a long exposure. If someone moved into the frame, they left an impression. It didn't take long for crafty photographers to see how they could profit from this. Sir David Brewster even explained how in his 1856 book, The Stereoscope, Its History, Theory, and Construction, the quote is, "For the purpose of amusement, the photographer might carry us even into the regions of the supernatural." And then he wrote, "His art enables him to give a spiritual appearance to one or more of his figures and to exhibit them as thin air amid the solid realities of the stereoscopic picture." In the aftermath of the Civil War in the United States, photographer William Mumler began selling spirit photos for $5 to $10, which was a hefty price at the time. That does seem like a lot.
And they're fake.
And they're fake.
Yeah.
That reminds me of the fake, like turn of the century maybe or earlier photographs of those two women who pretended they were fairies.
Yes. Oh my
Fake
God. They made
fairy
a movie.
photos.
Yeah, they made a movie about that.
Did they?
Yeah, I think it was called, I don't remember. It was like called like a fairy tale or something like that. Yeah. It was like two little girls. Like, yeah. Also, Brian Froud, the artist, he like designed like with Jim Henson and did like all the puppets for Labyrinth and stuff like that. He had a book series called Lady Coddington's Book of Press Fairies or something like. Hold on.
She's getting the book.
Look at this. Look at this book.
Ooh,
Isn't it
pretty.
pretty? Yeah. So it's based on Lady Coddington, who old photos of like them catching the fairies and pressing them
Yes.
in the
Yes,
page.
exactly that. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, dude, it's a really cute movie. If you haven't seen that movie, go
You
check
think
it
it's called Fairy Tale?
out. I don't
Something similar?
remember. I'm blanking on the exact name of it, but something along those
Okay.
lines. Yeah.
Okay.
He's got a whole series of these like press fairy books. They're adorable, and they're based on that whole spiel of like the girls faking the fairy photo.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
And you have that book. That's so funny. Mumler claimed that as a medium, he could capture spirits on film. To his clients, he insisted that although they couldn't see the ghosts, cameras could. As a result, people mourning the loss of their fathers, brothers, and husbands in the war flocked to Mumler to have their photos taken. Even Mary Todd Lincoln sat for Mumler, who happily summoned the ghost of her assassinated husband, President Abraham Lincoln. Though Mumler was later accused of fraud, spirit photography quickly found its way across the Atlantic to Victorian England.
Interesting. So I'm wondering how he faked the spirit of Abe Lincoln showing up in a photo.
Then he put one of his buddies, one of his bros, in like a top hat and had him like walk into frame and jump back out of frame.
Yeah, like what the like, I'm sorry. I know back then a lot of the technology was brand new. Nobody really knew the ins and outs of like, how a photo works. But come on.
And be like, that's not my husband. You put pubes on that man's face. That's not a beard.
But like,
Mary Todd, come on.
a lot of these people were so gullible, and a lot of these charlatans preyed on these vulnerable people who genuinely just wanted a connection with their deceased loved ones.
Do you think she believed that that was him, or do you think she was like, that's bullshit?
I don't know, because I don't really know much about Abe Lincoln's wife, but I do know that Harry Houdini was a skeptic, and he actually went around trying to disprove like, seances and like these psychics who were trying to connect these people with their deceased loved ones. He was so against, like, because like he did stage magic,
But he had a talent and a skill. Like he had to work at that skill. And I think he's just thinking these people are ripping everybody off. They don't have any skill. Like, what the fuck?
Because he's like so well versed in smoke and mirrors, I think he could call bullshit when he sees it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
He's
know?
the king of smoke and mirrors.
Right. Yeah. So
Anyway. we just said that it found its way across the Atlantic to Victorian England. So tell me about ghost photography in England.
all right. So Victorians in England lived during a turbulent time. The 19th century produced new technologies like the camera, but also questions about life, death, and the afterlife. The spiritualism movement emerged to answer some of these questions, and it offered the comforting notion that deceased loved ones remained nearby as ghosts. And spirit photography seemed to offer concrete proof that spiritualism was legitimate. Spirit photography serves as a stage where Victorians could plot out a reassuring version of the afterlife, particularly in an age of eroding faith, explained English scholar Jen Cadwallader. Victorian spirit photographers swiftly followed the mold set by Mumler. If they had a picture of someone their living clients wanted to contact, they often added it to the photo. If not, they got creative. Everybody's so creative. I keep going back to that lady. One photo taken by Frederick A. Hudson shows a woman with her deceased father-in-law. Her husband had some doubts about the ghost photographs. He wrote, quote, "My wife obtained a tolerably clear photograph of its supposed my father, and although it certainly is very likely, there are one or two discrepancies which do not justify my coming to a fixed conclusion on the point," end quote. However, he also noted that he saw no trickery or delusions and added, quote, "I must say that I consider spirit photography the most interesting and truthful manifestation we have yet been blessed with," end quote. The proliferation of Victorian spirit photography did produce skeptics. However, William Stainton Moses, an English priest and medium, examined 600 photographs and concluded that some people would recognize a sheet and a broom as their dear departed. Like, yeah, people back then were so freaking gullible. You could literally put a sheet over someone with like little eye holes cut out and they'd be like, oh my God, it's a ghost.
Dude, it's funny that he was a priest and
Uh-huh.
a medium.
Yeah.
Which to me, like growing up in the Catholic household, you don't talk, ghosts aren't a thing. Like you don't talk about ghosts, don't talk about death, firstly, but like they don't believe in like communicating with the dead, none of that shit. So it's
Right.
interesting. I'm sorry, was this in the Victorian era? Is that right? Is that where we're at?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, everybody was obsessed with death, but I'm just curious that it's very
Right.
interesting that priesthood and mediumship were connected with this William Stanton
Yeah.
Moses.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, if you think about it, if a priest is being sent in to cast a demon out of somebody, like an exorcism, an exorcism, like if a priest is being sent in to do that, like why wouldn't he be able to contact somebody's loved one from the other side? I don't
That's
know.
true.
Yeah. However, Moses also stood by spirit photographers who he saw as genuine. Though one such photographer, Frenchman Edouard Isidore Bouguer, was accused of fraud, Moses claimed that one of Bouguer's 1874 photos, featured in the gallery above, was the most important spirit photographs ever. As time went on, doubts about spirit photography waxed and waned, but it remained a popular novelty nonetheless. Photographers in Victorian England even lay the foundation for one of the most famous spirit photographers in the post-World War I period, William Hope.
Dude, this is like I've always been fascinated with like the macabre and the dark and like it's spooky season coming up, but this stuff is just so intriguing to me and it always has been. Mysticism, spirituality, death, always interested me, and I'm sure it has you because we're basically the same person sometimes. But
Yeah.
it's just so freaking fascinating because humans, the centuries change, but we don't really change all that much.
Yeah,
Cool.
there's always going to be a fascination with like the unknown because like really we're as like going through this human experience, we're never gonna know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you hear those people who have died, have seen the light, have
Right.
had like they see their heaven, their hell, and they're pronounced dead for a certain amount of time, but then they come back and they have all these stories.
Right. I'm not saying I'm agnostic. Like, I definitely believe in a higher power, but I fainted in the shower once and I fucking blacked out. I didn't see shit. So that made me question a lot about, like, I'm like, did I die for that moment of time? I was knocked the fuck out on the shower floor. Like, did I die? But
Oh
like,
my God. I'm glad you're all right. Jesus. How old were you?
like 19.
That is so scary. What happened?
I went to the doctor. They ran all the tests. They didn't find shit. So I think I was either just stressed or like not sleeping a lot. I was kind of like obsessing about a boy that like kind of fucked me over at that time. So, you know, I'm sure I was like kind of making myself sick over a situation that, like didn't need that much attention.
Oh man. Did you feel
But, like,
yourself going down?
no, it like came out of nowhere.
Weird.
I just like went down and then I woke up to like my dad banging on the shower door. Like,
Oh
not
my
shower door. He was banging on the bathroom door. He was like, "Hey," I guess he heard the bang of like me falling on the ground. But like,
Dude, that's so crazy.
I have a fear now of like the bathtub drain filling up and then me drowning.
Oh, that's so scary.
There was no water backing up then, but I was like thinking to myself, like, dude, if that shower was backing up, if that tub was backing up when I fainted, I would have drowned that day. I
That's
would have
so
drowned.
scary.
So like
Oh my
now
God.
I have this fear of like the tub needs to be unbacked up at all times in case I ever faint again.
Oh.
So sometimes when the tub's not backed up, I'm like, Avi, you need to take care of this now. I'm gonna drown. I'm gonna faint. I'm gonna drown.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Anyway,
That's so scary. Okay, William Hope. Let's dive in.
William Hope.
He was a spirit photographer of the 1920s. After the devastation of World War I, spirit photography enjoyed a new popularity. Photographer William Hope offered people a way to commune with their dead loved ones. In the 1920s, Hope printed a number of shocking spirit photographs. Working with better technology than the Victorians, his images were clearer, crisper, and more convincing. Hope had his fair share of skeptics, however, and in 1922, the Society for Physical Research sent paranormal investigation Harry Price to investigate Hope's ghost photography. Price went to sit for a photo in Hope's studio, but he had a trick up his sleeve. The investigator had marked the plates he gave to Hope. Okay, oh my God, this is intriguing. As such, he was able to prove that Hope had switched them with pre-existing plates.
Oh, charlatan!
Charlatan! Though this exposed Hope as a fraud, many prominent members of the spiritualism movement rose to his defense. Notably, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who created the character of Sherlock Holmes, stood by Hope's side. He even published his own fiery report, The Case of Spirit Photography. In the end, ghost photography like this offers an eerie look at how people once viewed life and death. To many, they offered comfort. To some, they represented the worst kind of fraud. Though the photographer's tricks have been exposed, their photos are still plenty creepy today.
I wanted to go back real quick to the Lady Coddingtons and the fairies.
Okay.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, I believe he vouched for these little girls that the photos were real. And I believe that Harry Houdini came back at it saying, no, they're fake.
Wow.
So I think Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Harry Houdini were kind of like in like a little tiff over these fake photos. So I guess Sir Arthur, he would come to the defense of a lot of spiritualists.
He wanted to keep that illusion going. It sounds like.
And Harry Houdini just was like wanted to just, I guess, debunk all of it. He was the Mythbusters of Victorian era.
Yeah.
No, the 1920s, it says, right? Real quick. So I actually just watched an episode of a show where they practiced spirit photography in the 1920s.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so it's really weird because the whole show doesn't take place in the 1920s. It takes place in it takes place in present day. So it's called Archive 81, and it's really creepy, has tons of occult undertones. It's about an archivist named Dan Turner, and Dan is in present day. He takes this mysterious job restoring this collection of damaged videotapes from 1994. So through Dan's kind of experience, restoring these tapes, we kind of jump back into the 90s of when this footage was actually happening, but it also kind of has a connection to the 1920s. He's constructing like this documentary filmmaker Melody Pendris and her investigation into this dangerous cult which originated in the 1920s.
Okay.
Let me just say, it's super creepy. There's also actually a podcast that called Archive 81 that this is based off of. It ran a lot longer. It might even still be running. I'm not sure. But unfortunately, the Netflix show got canceled after like one season, so I'm really pissed about
They're the us of Archive 81.
Yeah, I was like, I want to keep watching this shit, but it's we have one more episode to watch tonight. It's been our dinner show.
Nice.
And then unfortunately it's over. But yeah, I just thought that the show Archive 81, like that episode that we watched last night, they practiced this spirit photography. I wish I could like find a clip of like what I'm talking about. It's kind of spooky. I saw it. I was like, oh, that's weird. And that was before was it before or after I did these notes? And I was like, that's weird. That kind of is in
Weird
line with like
timing.
all the stuff that we were talking about.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's just super cool. If you have Netflix, watch Archive 81. Okie dokie. All right. So real quick before we jump into the next spiel.
Yes.
I wanted to share this spooky looking book. This spooky looking book called The Chronicles of Spirit Photography by Miss Houghton, published in 1882. Click on that link right at the front of this book.
It's beautiful. It's green. Is that Shields green?
It might be Shields green.
Is that Shields green?
It might be.
What year was this? 1882? It might be.
1814 to this was publication 1882. Yeah, it was used as color for paper, wallpapers, paper hangings, even in children's toys. Oh my god.
That's like lead based paint for kiddos back in the 60s.
I was trying to find what the years were that it like went out of style or when they stopped using it.
Oh, yeah.
Some European nations started banning arsenic-containing pigments in the 1830s and 1840s. Shields green did not completely fall out of favor until the 1860s.
Oh, damn.
So this couldn't have been Shields green because this was published in 1882, so it had already died out by that point.
Okay.
Yeah, but it does look like it could be.
It's so pretty.
But yeah, it just looks so cool. It's like a chronicling of spirit photography. It's a long freaking book. It's like almost 300 pages, but
My neighbor was telling me about this site, archive.org.
uh-huh.
There's tons of good stuff, apparently. I haven't yet to jump down it like I have that Jester site. But
Right.
I like how this is put together because it almost gives you like a Kindle flip through, like the page
Yeah.
turning. Very,
Yeah.
very cool.
This author, Miss Houghton, her name was Georgiana Houghton. She had another book about seances.
Cool.
So she like wrote about like a lot of spiritual stuff. So it seems like she was one spooky bitch.
I love it.
Yeah, so
That's
check her
super-
out. Check this out. We'll link this in the show notes. I just wanted to mention this book because I just thought this was freaking
Yeah.
fascinating. Love
Super
this
cool. I love the yellowy pages. It's neat.
Same. Yeah.
This next article, Justina, why don't you take a look at that author, H.F. Talbot.
Oh, Talbot. Didn't we
Henry
talk about him earlier?
Fox Talbot. This is volume 4 from the abstracts of the papers printed in the Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society of London, volume 4, 1837 to
God.
1843. So we have a little bit from the man himself.
Okay.
This is called An Account of Some Recent Improvements in Photography
All
by
right.
Mr. Talbot Esquire.
And just to remind, this was Daguerre's arch nemesis.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, right.
His frenemy.
His frenemy. I don't think they
So-
were friends at all. I don't think.
Yeah. This was about 5 pages. I only took like 3 entries from it, but it
Okay.
says, and I'm guessing this is his writing. These are his words. New mode of preparation of the daguerreotype plates, by which portraits can be taken in short space of time of from 5 to 15 seconds, according to the power of light, discovered by A. Claudette in the beginning of May 1841, communicated by the Marquis of Northampton, Pres R.S. Not sure what that means. It says, the next one says, my improvement, says the author, consists of using for the preparation of the plates a combination of chlorine and iodine. I follow the preparation recommended by Daguerre. After having put the plate in the iodine box for a short time and before it has acquired any appearance of yellow color, I take it out and pass it for about 2 seconds over the opening of a bottle containing chloride of iodine, and immediately I put it again in the iodine box, where it acquires very soon a yellow obscura. I have substituted to the chloride of iodine chloride of bromine and have found nearly the same result, but I prefer chloride of iodine as producing a better effect, and besides, on accounts of the noxious smell of the bromine. And then lastly, he says, the result of my preparation is such that I have operated in 10 seconds with the same apparatus, which without any chlorine required 4 or 5 minutes. When using only the original preparation of Daguerre, I have obtained an image of clouds in 4 seconds. This was like blowing their minds, I'm sure, at the time.
But like he like openly admitted that he used the preparation that was suggested by Daguerre, and then he tried to pass this shit off as his own. Like,
I know. And then he wrote about it.
and then he wrote about it. Fucking
Anyway, so I thought that was
Okay.
cool because actually when I put that in here, I didn't even realize I talked about Talbot earlier, so it's really cool connection there. Just like was it the Sudbury? Yeah, the Sudbury, the house, the witch house with the shifting sands.
That's
How
right.
all of those articles were connected.
Yeah.
Weird.
It's all connected.
All
It
connected.
really
So that
is.
was from jester.com.
All right, so this next article is called The Application of the Daguerreotype Process to Astronomical Purposes. And this is by Thomas Knox from the Proceedings of the Royal Irish Academy between 1836 and 1869. So the following communication from the Reverend Thomas Knox was read, oh my God, am I having a stroke? River Glebe, Tumavara, April 27th, 1842. An application of the daguerreotype process to astronomical purposes occurred to me last autumn?
Sure. Autuimn.
What's autuim?
Autuim. That's just how they spelled it back in the day.
All right. It is well known that an inscription on a building which it would require a telescope to read from its smallness or distance can, if a view of that building be taken in a camera on one of Daguerre's plates, be read by a microscope, though invisible on the plate to the naked eye. Also, that the internal structure of some insects can be as well studied by examining the image of the object on the plate by a microscope, that image having been formed from the oxyhydrogen microscope. From these known facts, it is extremely probable that were an image of a double star or one of the nebula taken on a Daguerre plate in the focus of a telescope of moderate power, but which of itself could not divide the star or resolve the nebula. Another fascinating connection. Incubus, which we were just talking about, has a song called Nebula.
Hey.
That by then examining the plate by strong microscope, the state of that star might be ascertained as well as if it had been in the first place examined by a telescope of very high power. That the light of the fixed stars possesses chemical rays and would therefore affect Daguerre's plates, there can be little doubt, and I feel certain in my own mind that the image thus formed would reveal to the microscope as much as a telescope of equal power could in the first instance have ascertained.
That's cool. So they're saying instead of looking through a telescope at the star, take a picture of it and use a microscope to look at the picture. That's like, we do that shit with our phones now. We're like, we take a picture of that thing over there and then zoom in.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he also says, I am aware of theorizing this way is very unprofitable, but I do not possess instrumental means for trying the experiment myself, my equatorial not having any clock motion adapted to it. On the accuracy and steadiness of the clock movement all would depend. Any small telescope or perhaps even a single lens equatorially mounted would do the rest. The plates need not exceed in size the pencil of rays and may be very small. Do you understand what this is saying?
Dude, I love how they talk. I'm wondering if their process doesn't have a timer set to it for the appropriate amount of exposure.
Okay.
You know, when you take like night photographs, you have to put it like on a tripod or have it on something very still because any little movement fucks it up. Possibly that.
Okay.
But otherwise, I'm not sure.
Okay. So this last paragraph says, if this succeed, we might gain great advantages by thus mapping the stars and nebula and examining their state at our leisure in our study and being able to take advantage of what every practical astronomer knows to occur so seldom in our climate, namely a state of the atmosphere favorable for delicate observation. To try it, some easily divided stars such as Xerxes might be first used, and if the plate registered it as a double star, we might then proceed to other more difficult objects. So this isn't the only occurrence that daguerreotype was used when observing the cosmos, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this later on, which I'm excited to because there's another personal connection.
Oh my God. It's just crazy that they were like, we want to know about the universe. We want to know about the night sky. And this just was like another little step. So let's clear up some myths about Victorian postmortem photographs. We touched on this a little bit earlier, and we're coming back around to the Atlas Obscura. And this is by Sonia Fatomsky. The tagline says, story abound of dead people being propped up on stands to seem alive. The reality was different. Fake postmortem photographs were characterized in error or intentionally mislabeled to sell for profit, have in recent years become widespread on the internet. They fill online galleries of Victorian oddities and accumulate on Pinterest and Instagram, even otherwise reputable websites, have contributed to the myths. Though unfortunate, it's also understandable. There's clearly something compelling about the lurid, not so distant culture engaging with death in a way we don't. In truth, the propped up people in Victorian postmortems look alive for a much simpler reason. They are. Posing stands were used to help living models hold still for the era's long exposures. Okay, even that is misleading. Long exposure is a deceiving term, says Mike Zone, a longtime photographer and owner of Obscura Antiques in New York. Initially, he explains, exposure time could be half an hour or an hour, but was for landscapes, never for portraiture. By 1839, when the daguerreotype was invented, the longest exposure, they were about a minute and a half. By the 1850s, they were 3 to 8 seconds. It says, when people talk about long exposure, it sounds like people had to wait for half an hour, Zone says. They did not, but an exposure of even 1 second is long enough to allow for blurring, so they had posing stands. According to the website Viral Nova, they also had posable corpse arms. So other so-called postmortems are often assumed to be of dead people because something seems spooky. Too stiff posture, unnatural-looking eyes, or eerie shadows can easily start a photo's postmortem career, and much of the supposed evidence is again just evidence of an older photography system. Early chemical processes made colors appear differently. Blue eyes could come out as white. What color are Goron's eyes?
Are they brown? Are they brown or blue?
Don't know. All I can think about now is his daguerreotype eyes. But
Yeah.
that's interesting that it kind of like washes out the color if it's a lighter color. An exposure might leave limbs dark in order to make the face clearer. Posing stands, Zone says, are similar to microphone or guitar stands. Though they're made of cast iron, they're not particularly sturdy or heavy, weighing perhaps 20 to 25 pounds. More damningly, they're not counterbalanced. Quote, they weren't made for or sturdy enough to actually hold up the weight of a dead body, Zone says. If you set a corpse, rigor mortis would have needed to set in just the right way on a posing stand, it would certainly topple over. An intriguing thing about the spread of Victorian-era death myths is that they are not ancient history. The 1800s were not so far away. Patent description, images, illustrations, and catalog ads from the era can tell us everything from how Victorians actually cared for their dead to practices and inventions of photography. An avid photographer himself, Zone researched Victorian records so that he could make his own ambrotypes and daguerreotypes. When it came to posing stands, quote, not a single bit of it mentions anything about dead people. Okay, so fuck whatever I said earlier about them using the stands to pose the dead people. I was wrong. I misread this. You can read the actual words of the people who invented the stands and how they were used, he says. You can read the actual words of the people who are photographers and given firsthand accounts, as well as the accounts of people who were having their photos taken. We have the catalogs, we have the illustrations, we have every bit of proof that someone could need. Zone talks about a 2009 film called The Haunting in Connecticut, which perfectly shows how a good story spreads with a little help from capitalism. The film's postmortem photographs appeared Victorian, but were taken specifically for production to prevent moviegoers from contacting the studio and demanding money, claiming to be the descendants of the people in the photos. Does that happen?
I guess so. Well, yeah, I guess like remember in the Maria's Island episode we just recorded talking about the fake or the zip code, like why didn't they use a fake zip code? Like they use fake phone numbers and because like people call those numbers and bother the people who own those phone numbers. Like happens.
So some of these very photos, Zone says, are now circulating on same blogs and listicles that claim stands were used to hold the dead bodies. The same thing happened with post-mortems that did with tear catchers.
Yeah.
Look that up real quick. Says Christian Harding, one-time owner of the Belfry oddity store in Seattle. People want to create a fake history and to believe it. They also want to profit from it. Postmortems can earn a pretty penny on both eBay and Etsy, and the majority of collectors are not going to consult a patent library before clicking the Buy It Now button. Even worse, the more misinformation there is online, the likelier it is that someone's, quote, research will turn up myths rather than facts. And he goes on to say, as simple as it sounds, the big general rule is, again, if they look alive, they're alive.
All right, you want to hear some creepy ass shit?
Yeah, bro.
So these tear catchers. So this article from Atlas Obscura. The Victorians were experts in the art of mourning. They wore black for extended periods, wove human hair into elaborate wreaths, and wept. And it is said they would weep into delicate glass bottles, and these bottles that caught their tears were called tear catchers. It was basically, I guess, Victorian ephemera, which was like hot in those days, as was death, right? But yeah, so mourning artifacts are in high demand. Vintage tear catchers, also called lacrimatory bottles, can be found in online auctions and marketplaces as well as estate sales and antique stores.
What?
So during the 19th century, especially in America during and after the Civil War, supposedly tear catchers were used as a measure of grieving time. So once the tears cried into them had evaporated, the mourning period was over.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that neat?
Dude, that's crazy.
So
fucking metal.
Tear catchers, there you go. All right, so this next article comes from BayNews9.com. This is called Tampa. I was thinking of like the Florida Man. Tampa mortician hosts traveling casket photo booth. So for some, death is a topic they shy away from, and it might seem a bit spooky to include it as a theme for a family photo shoot. However, Jessica Dillon founded the Embalmerina's traveling postmortem photography parlor to provide exactly that experience. I guess this is her quote. She says, postmortem photography is just one of those neat things. People still take pictures of their loved ones at funerals, but it's not the same as it was back in the Victorian era. I have one of my great-great-grandfather. Oh, I have a photo of my great-great-grandfather, and it was always just a cool image of him in his coffin. He was from North Carolina, and he moved out west and died out there. So they just took a picture of him in his coffin and sent it back to his family. I guess that makes sense, like, back in the day when...
Do Croatians still do that?
Yeah.
To send back to our relatives back home. Like we still do that shit.
Yeah, they did that. Avi did that when his father passed away. They took a photo of his father to send back to India. And it's not necessarily not supposed to be a morbid thing, but it's just like a thing to respect the dead. But like, us Americans, like we just see that as such a morbid thing.
I mean, for somebody else's family, fine, but I would not want to picture my grandfather like that. I could not even go up to the casket until the very, very end. Like that whole time we were there, I was just like, no.
Yeah.
Nope.
Not about it. So Jessica goes on, a little bit more about her. She's a mortician who's been embalming bodies in Tampa Bay for 11 years. She says, we do their hair and makeup and dress them and casket them and get them prepared for their funerals. She's always been interested in a career as a last responder. Working during the pandemic taught her how invaluable her role is. She calls herself a perfectionist who uses family photos to get it right. She says, you want the family to have a good memory of their loved one. It's an honor that we can do that for them, she added. Now she's helping others create their own post-mortem themed photos while they're still alive. She provides the backdrop and the clothing, and her biggest prop is a toe pincher casket. What the?
Those are dope. Those are the ones that like taper down to your feet.
Okay, that they're called toe pinchers?
Yeah. Like
Coffin
your
cutter.
normal looking coffin, not a casket. Yeah, toe
Toe
pinchers.
pincher, coffin cutter.
Hey,
So metal, bringing it back to episode 3. So while Dylan has found a way to merge her career as a mortician and her hobby of photography, she also feels she's serving a greater purpose. She says it's not for everybody, but some people like this kind of thing. It's cool to be able to offer something unique. And she's hoping her photos can help make death less frightening. You can block out 20-minute photo sessions with the coffin for $20.
dang, $1 a minute. I wonder how many photos you get.
Yeah, I don't know. I think she's just like boom, 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 just takes 20 photos.
You get like 8,000 photos, like a wedding photo album. Ooh, shit. Let's talk about daguerreotypes in pop culture and movies. There were a couple movies that popped up with the keyword. This first one, I really want to watch. It's a mini series called Dead Still, and it got a 5.5 out of 10 rating, but it's from 2020. This looks really interesting. I didn't look up if it's on Netflix or whatever, but it's set in the 1880s in Ireland in a Victorian era heyday of postmortem photography. The 6-episode period drama follows a renowned memorial photographer who is drawn into a series of apparent murder that appear to be linked to his work.
Dude, that sounds awesome.
The little clip that I saw, he's posing the person and he's very, very gently putting their hands on the lap and adjusting little things. I was like, okay, yeah. I can see it being done with reverence and care and gentleness. So that was kind of cool.
I want to watch this. I'm intrigued.
Yeah. The next one is called Postmortem, and it got a 6.9 out of 10. It was also from 2020. The description says, a postmortem photographer and a little girl confront ghosts in a haunted village after the First World War. Another one is called Family Portrait, 8.6 out of 10. It's a short drama from 2014. And the description says, on the dawn of their annual family portrait, 3 family members are lost in a tragic car accident. Mother and son survive, and each try to maintain sanity while coping with their loss. Maggie returns in the house while Ellie takes advice from a haunting voice, devises a plan to bring the family back together for one final picture.
Sounds eerie.
So spooky. I see a familiar name down here.
Yeah, we're going to get into this shit right now. Okay, so practical magic, coming back to everything's connected, all right? And Salem too.
Mm.
So we're going to talk about some literature now. The name Nathaniel Hawthorne ring a bell? He's the author of the House of the Seven Gables, which the actual House of Seven Gables resides in Salem, Massachusetts. And Hawthorne, the connection to John Hathorne.
Mm-hmm.
Nathaniel Hawthorne actually he added the W to his name to disassociate himself from his shitty ass uncle who put all those innocent people to death during the witch trials.
There's
So
a book I kept seeing in Books a Million, and it's fiction. It's called, like, it doesn't matter what it's called. I kept picking it up. Both times I was there, I picked it up because the cover is so fucking cool.
Yeah.
But it's a fictional thing about this woman who gets involved with Nathaniel Hawthorne and the connection to the Salem thing.
Yeah.
I got to figure out what the name is. Hang on. Go ahead. You can
What it
continue
is.
reading.
All right, so this article is called Nathaniel Hawthorne on the Daguerreotype in House of Seven Gables. I don't think I've ever read House of Seven Gables. I might have seen there's like a movie iteration of it. I might have seen that like once. I don't recall anything about daguerreotypes in it, so I was fascinated that I even found this information. So this article is by W.I. Lincoln Adams, editor of Photographic Times in New York. And I found this on daguerreotypearchive.org. There's an entire website dedicated to daguerreotype articles, photos, all that stuff. This says, the present movement in America to honor the memory of Daguerre by erecting in Washington a fitting monument is reviving an interest in all that appertains to the process which she discovered. I wonder if all the readers of the International Annual have noticed the interesting remark on the subject which America's great romance writer Nathaniel Hawthorne has made in his characteristic way in the 6th chapter of that fascinating book, The House of Seven Gables. The young daguerreotypist Holgrave is working in the garden of the old Pychion mansion, I hope I'm saying that right, and Phoebe, the gentle New England maiden, has met him there in caring for her favorite fowls and plants. Holgrave declares his profession to Phoebe to be that of a daguerreotypist, to which she replies, I don't much like pictures of that sort. They are so hard and stern, besides drawing away from the eye and trying to escape altogether. They are conscious of looking very unamiable, I suppose, and therefore hate to be seen. If you will permit me, said the artist, looking at Phoebe, I shall like to try whether the daguerreotype can bring out disagreeable traits on a perfect amiable face. But there certainly is truth in what you have said. Most of my likenesses do look unamiable, but the very sufficient reason, I fancy, is because the originals are so. There is a wonderful insight in heaven's broad and simple sunshine. While we give it credit for depicting only the merest surface, it actually brings out the secret character with the truth that no painter would ever venture upon, even could he detect it. There is at least no flattery in my humble line of art. Now here is a likeness which I have taken over and over again, and still with no better result. Yet the original wears, to common eyes, a very different expression. It would gratify me to have your judgment on this character. To be sure, she said, you have found some way of copying the portrait without its black velvet cap and gray beard, and I've given him a modern coat and satin cravat instead of his cloak and band. You would have seen other differences had you looked a little younger, said Holgrave. I can assure you that this is a modern face, and one which you will very probably meet. Now the remarkable point is that the original wears to the world's eye, and for aught I know, to his most intimate friends, an exceedingly pleasant countenance, indicative of benevolence, openness of heart, sunny good humor, and other traces of worthy qualities of that cast. The son, as you see, tells quite another story, and will not be coaxed out of it after half a dozen patient attempts on my part. Here we have the man, sly, subtle, hard, imperious, and withal cold as ice. Look at that eye. Would you like to be at its mercy? At the mouth? Could it ever smile? And yet, if you could only see the benign smile of the original, thus it is that the daguerreotype, not only, but also our modern silver photograph, reveals the inner character of a man. It is as if the sun could penetrate beneath the surface and depict the spirit there which is not always discernible by the human eye. Many photographers have undoubtedly observed this fact in their portraits. But who, save the great romancer, has described it so vividly?
That reveals the inner character of a man. It's like, I know Jimmy's dead and that's like his ghosty ghost, but that's like, that is his true persona, is this disgusting, filthy, like awful thing to have in your life.
Right.
It's his real character that's more real than actual Jimmy, you know?
Yeah. But yeah, that article was found on this website, daguerreotypearchive.org. This is the research archive of Gary W. Ewer regarding the history of the daguerreotype. And on this site, he's got a collection of texts, advertisements, graphics, ephemera, actual daguerreotypes, photojournals, and various research that dates back to pre-1839 all the way up until the 1950s.
God damn, that's amazing.
So, lots of daguerreotype on there. So if you want to go look at all that stuff, check out that site. Yeah.
Oh my God, there's so much. I just clicked on like one. Oh my God, one thing.
It's a rabbit hole. Have fun exploring that later.
This next article is from Getty.edu, and it's called The Silver Canvas Daguerreotype Masterpieces from the J. Paul Getty Museum by Bates Lowry and Isabel Barrett Lowry. When the Getty Museum began to collect photographs in 1984, among the most notable were nearly 2,000 daguerreotypes, many of which were made in the first dozen years after January 1839, when the invention of this new art form by Jacques-Louis Mandé Daguerreau was announced to the world. Daguerreau's success at producing images on silver-coated copper plates by the action of light took the world by surprise. So miraculous were these pictures in the eyes of the first witnesses that the caricaturist Theodore Maureset drew artists committing suicide out of fear that the new medium would make their work obsolete.
Oh my
Oh my gosh. In reality, the daguerreotype and subsequent developments in photographic techniques prompted a dialogue between traditional graphic art and photography that continues to this day, illuminating and enriching both forms. Photography now occupies an important place in the Getty Museum. Over more than a decade, the museum has held 45 exhibitions and published approximately 20 books and catalogs drawn mostly from the collection's 65,000 paper photographs.
Wow.
This is a lot. Despite this, our daguerreotypes remain too little known by the public. This book presents for the first time a generous and expertly chosen sample of the Getty's holdings. Its publication has required treating, rehousing, and re-photographing all the works included in it, work that has been ably performed by the curators, conservators, and other staff members. Bates Lowry and Isabel Barrett Lowry have written an engrossing essay on the relationship of the daguerreotypes to the artistic traditions of Europe and America during the first half of the 19th century. They have selected nearly 80 examples from our collection in written texts that provide each picture a context and a sharper definition. In so doing, they have managed the difficult job of weaving together cultural and art history with the development of photography. I am very grateful to have them. This book owes an existence to the wisdom and persistence of Western Neff, curator of photographs, who 5 years ago proposed the idea of publishing and exhibiting the best of the museum's daguerreotypes during the opening year of the new Getty Museum at the Getty Center. This ends by, I think this is the Associate Director and Chief Curator, Deborah Gibson, says, I want to thank him.
Oh, Gribbin.
Griffin? What did I say? Griffin?
He said Deborah Gibson, but Debbie Gibson, the pop star.
Deborah Gibbon, I'm sorry, says, I want to thank him, talking about Weston, and the other members of the museum staff whose efforts brought this book into being.
Yeah, I apologize. I should have noted that before you said this was an article. This is actually from a... Click on that link. Look at this book. Fascinating. And the entire book is available via PDF. And you can just flip through this book and look at these daguerreotypes.
Oh, wow.
Isn't this a beautiful book?
Oh my God, that's so pretty. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a whole book on the daguerreotypes. So,
guys, I'm telling you, go over to our Patreon so you can get these notes and these links because, Jesus, there's really good, really good stuff here.
We're rounding the end here, and keeping with the theme of pop culture, I wanted to highlight 8 important daguerreotype photos, and this is an article from mentalfloss.com. So the first one on this list is L'Atelier de l'Artiste, and this is the still life of plaster casts on a window ledge above, taken by Daguerre. So this very first one is actually taken by Daguerre in 1837, and it's purportedly the first surviving image taken using his process.
Dang.
The very first one. The next one is the Boulevard du Temple in Paris. Daguerre took this photo, which is believed to be the earliest to show a living person, in 1838. Because of the long exposure time, which is 10 minutes or more, no moving traffic was captured, but a shoe shiner and his customer were still enough to leave a trace. Number 3, Robert Cornelius. So this self-portrait of photographer Robert Cornelius is believed to be the first daguerreotype taken in North America. This next one is interesting. Okay, this is the one, remember before we were talking about the cosmos and kind of like how the daguerreotype was used to observe the stars and astronomy and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. The moon was another one. John William Draper took the first daguerreotype of the moon in 1839 or 1840 from a rooftop in New York. His first attempt was not successful. Originally from England, Draper was a chemistry professor at New York University during the 1800s. This silver platinum plate of the moon was the first of a series that he shot with the assistance of a telescope. He later presented these photos to the Science Academy. Draper died in 1882, making this image public domain. Speaking of public domain, I just wanted to mention, this is actually my brother's album cover for his band Lunar Code's debut, called Stories Untold.
What?
This is the photo. This is
whoa, cool. Hold that closer to that camera. Let me see that. What?
That's a daguerreotype. I remember when my brother was looking for an album cover, and his band is called Lunar Code, and he was telling me about the first photo ever taken of the moon, and I'm like, okay, cool. Like, didn't think anything of it. Didn't realize it was a daguerreotype this whole time. Never even heard of the term before you told me, and look at that.
It looks like a watercolor,
right?
But that daguerreotype, that little splotchiness, like the water, it looks like water damage on a picture, like Jimmy's face had.
Right, exactly. That's what I was thinking. Like, it's very like those like water kind of spots.
That's
but
so
I'm guessing
cool.
that must be from the salt or whatever they use to, I guess, what did they say they did with the salt? I don't remember.
I don't know.
Yeah, my brain's gonna explode. There's so much information. So yeah, I just thought that was a fascinating connection. I was like,
That is so neat.
that's my brother's album cover.
Wow. Did you recognize it?
Well, when I went to this article, none of the photos were working, but the story sounded familiar.
Okay.
And I Googled the first photo daguerreotype of the moon, and then that photo popped up, and I was like, that's his cover!
I can't imagine. You're so excited. I'm sure you were stoked.
I had it's all connected moment. I was like, oh my God.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so number 5, the next one, Abraham Lincoln's portrait. The earliest known photograph of America's 16th president was a daguerreotype, taken when Lincoln was a 37-year-old lawyer and congressman-elect living in Springfield, Illinois.
Wow.
Number 6, the first news photo. This French daguerreotype of an arrest in 1847 might be the first ever news photograph. So the very first news photograph was a daguerreotype.
Of somebody getting arrested?
Somebody getting arrested.
Can you imagine?
Of somebody getting arrested. Yeah.
Dang.
Number 7, the solar eclipse sequence. William and Frederick Langenheim weren't the first photographers to capture a solar eclipse. That honor goes to Russian photographer named Burkowski, who made the first photograph of a solar eclipse in 1851. But they did snap this eclipse, the first visible in North America since the invention of photography on May 26, 1854. The reason that the moon travels from left to right in this eclipse instead of from right to left, as it does in the northern hemisphere. Oh, because I guess it's the southern hemisphere, so it's the other way. All uncorrected daguerreotypes are reversed as though looking in a mirror. There was an 8th image, but as the Metropolitan Museum of Art points out, in order to produce any kind of image at all, the Langenheims were forced to use the smallest cameras available, since smaller cameras require proportionally less light, and there was virtually no available light when the disks of the new moon eclipsed the largest part of the sun. The missing 8th image was probably made on the smaller plate size and showed nothing at all. A total eclipse.
Wow.
Yeah. And the last one, number 8, is Joseph Jenkins Roberts, the 1st and 7th president of Liberia. Joseph Jenkins Roberts, who emigrated there.
1st and 7th? They reelected him.
Yeah. So he emigrated there from Virginia in 1829. He was photographed in 1851 by Augustus Washington, an African-American daguerreotypist who also emigrated to the country in 1853. And I think I saw something about Edgar Allan Poe. There's this article on, I know I didn't put this in the notes because I completely forgot that I saw this somewhere, but on pbs.org, there is an article called The Purloined Portrait, Tracing Poe's Disappearing Daguerreotype. Sally Guest is an experienced researcher of daguerreotypes with a personal collection she says numbers some 448 pictures. most in little wooden boxes or leather cases, charming, sometimes haunting glimpses into the 19th century. So Guest already knew she might have something valuable when she came to Omaha, Nebraska in July 2004 with one of her latest acquisitions. From within a small decorative case, the image of a man looks out, its metallic surface marred noticeably by a diagonal smudge. But a second look reveals something else, someone familiar, the gloomy stare, rumpled suit, and disheveled hair of a macabre literary legend. Edgar Allan fucking Poe.
Fucking Rumpelstiltskin up
Fucking
here.
rumpled. So early photography. The method was short-lived, scarcely 10 years old. The Daguerrean era of photography was already near its end in 1849, the year that Poe died mysteriously at the age of 40. Cheaper, less complicated photographic processes quickly supplanted the daguerreotype by the early 1850s. In her interview with appraiser Wes Cowan, which first aired on Antiques Roadshow in February, Guest said she was browsing a little antique junk shop in Walnut, Iowa, when a daguerreotype caught her eye amid a jumble of other bits and pieces. As an aficionado of the form and suspecting the man it depicted might be Poe, Guest said she eagerly paid $96 for the photograph and took it home. Could you imagine being the antiques dealer not realizing you're holding on to a relic of a literary legend?
Only selling it for $96 too.
Right.
That's a steal. That's a
Right.
deal if I've ever heard one.
God, yeah. So she became very fond of the picture, and over the next year, she displayed it proudly on her mantle, even though she says Poe is not the best looking man. So Cohen confirmed on air that Guest's picture was indeed a daguerreotype of Poe. An amazing fact, given that only 6 such photographs of the poet were known to exist, he said, despite the superficial damage to the image, apparently caused by someone having wiped it with his finger. Cowan estimated its value at between $30,000 and $50,000. Could you imagine buying it for $96 and
That's insane.
getting it appraised for that? Conservatively calling it an incredible, rare portrait, Guest was overjoyed. I'm thrilled, she said. I liked the picture anyway, but now I really like it. Yeah, now so does everybody else, because now they want that shit. Cowan said there was no question that a great many people would be willing to compete for the photograph at auction, perhaps befitting a story that involves Edgar Allan Poe. From here, matters become more intriguing. So Guest says that after owning the daguerreotype for about 16 months, she decided she'd like to sell it. To do that, she first needed the picture to be authenticated as a genuine Poe portrait. So she got in touch with the Edgar Allan Poe Society in Baltimore, Maryland, and supplied them with a copy of her daguerreotype. They in turn consulted with artist and historian Michael J. Dees, author of the Portraits and Daguerreotypes of Edgar Allan Poe. Oh, so there's like a whole book about this shit. Soon thereafter, Guest says the Poe Society informed her that they believed her daguerreotype was real. Damn. If the Poe Society deems it real, it's got to be real. Dees says he recognized the daguerreotype in Sally Guest's possession more or less immediately. The distinctive scratch across Poe's face was the telltale sign. I see what they did there. Telltale heart.
Oh, shit.
Hey-o. Of the small number of Poe's portraits that exist, only 2 bear such blemishes, according to him. Thus, I don't know if you say it, is it Dees or Deas? I guess maybe Deas believed that quite probably. Guest's daguerreotype was one that he had himself examined up close in 1981 while researching his book at the Hampton Booth Theater Library, a private collection located in the Players Theatrical Club in New York City. Deas called the library. Their portrait of Poe was missing.
Oh, no.
Somebody stole that shit.
Oh, no.
Somebody stole it. All right, so, and here we go. Enter the FBI. A few months after Roadshow's 2004 Omaha taping, and following her contact with the Poe Society in Baltimore, Guest sent her daguerreotype to Cowan, who had agreed to help her sell it. In March of this year, following the Omaha Hour 3 broadcast, Cowan received a call from Special Agent Joanna Looney with the FBI in Manhattan. The daguerreotype that Guest bought and believed she owned was under investigation as a stolen work of art.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
One that by then had crossed several state borders. Cowan called Guest to let her know that she would be hearing from the Bureau.
So did she steal it or did she find it?
I think it was stolen, ended up in this random antique shop, and then she bought it unknowingly. Like she didn't know that it was stolen art.
So is she in trouble?
No, I don't think she's in trouble, but I think that the FBI just like wants to, I guess, confiscate it because it's stolen art at this
Freaking
point.
Poe got her in trouble.
Yeah, so Cowan called Guest to let her know that she would be hearing from the Bureau. Cowan says on April 20th, Special Agent David Bass of the FBI's Midwest Art Crime Team arrived at the Cincinnati offices of Cowan's Auctions to take possession of Guest's daguerreotype. According to Jim Margolin, a spokesman for the FBI's Manhattan office, the Poe daguerreotype became an FBI matter soon after the airing of the Antiques Roadshow Omaha episode in February 2005.
Oh,
He
God.
said the Bureau's, this is a shit show, antique shit show.
This is a shit show.
He said the Bureau's current assumption is that Guest's daguerreotype is the one reported missing by the Hampton Booth Library, but pending final official authentication by an expert, the picture remains in FBI custody. That fucking sucks. Imagine you're coming across this like relic of like a real portrait of Poe, only to have it like taken by the
I
FBI
know,
because
that
it's
fucking
under
blows.
investigation. I'm like, what the fuck?
Dang.
So this last section, as Michael Deas cautioned in a March 17, 2004 Times Picayune op-ed, the repatriation the repatriation of stolen artwork is a difficult and sometimes sensitive procedure. But how long had this Poe portrait even been on the loose? It's not clear just how recently the Hampton Booth Library may have confirmed that the Poe daguerreotype, which was not on public display, was still in its archives. Ironically, Deas's 1981 research in that last document reviewing of the picture on the library's premises, the library itself had been somewhat reticent. Raymond Wemlinger, Hampton Booth's curator and librarian, declined to comment on the situation at present, though he added that the library may be prepared to talk more about it this fall. According to Margolin, the FBI has not reached the point of pursuing a prosecution in the case, primarily because of the ambiguity surrounding when the picture first disappeared. How it ended up in a little shop in Iowa whose owners evidently had no idea of its significance or value only compounds the mystery. Nonetheless, with advice from her lawyer and Cowan, and in the face of an increasingly ominous investigation, Guest says she quickly realized that she would have no choice but to relinquish her innocently purchased portrait. Yeah, she did just that during a conference call this spring with Special Agent Looney, although Guest says she still considers it a donation. Surprisingly, despite the considerable ordeal and expense of it all, she's not even entitled to her $96.
Oh my God, she didn't get her money back?
She's not even gonna get her money back.
That
Oh my
sucks.
God.
That so sucks.
Guest says she feels only mildly bitter. Of course, I would be so
Absolutely.
fucking pissed.
100%.
Mildly bitter about the experience, and though she certainly didn't know when she bought it, she says she does believe in her heart that the daguerreotype belongs to the Hampton Booth Theatre Library. Referring to the picture's likely return there, she says, "I'm glad the piece is hopefully where it belongs, that they will take care of it, and that people will eventually get to see it." Yeah, man. I mean, like, it's a part of history,
Sure.
you know? So there was an update as of March 27, 2006. So this must be super old, this article. Since this story first ran in September 2005, the peculiar meanderings of this Edgar Allan Poe daguerreotype and the disputes surrounding it seem to have reached an end. According to FBI spokesman Jim Margolin, the portrait's authenticity was finally verified after delays owing to Hurricane Katrina, which damaged the home of the New Orleans-based authenticator, and the FBI returned the daguerreotype to the Hampton Booth Library in New York City on November 8th, 2005. Raymond Wemlinger, the library's curator, confirmed that the Poe picture is once again back in the library's possession and, after an absence of many years, available for viewing by qualified researchers. So it's not even available to the general public.
That's crazy.
Yeah, isn't
It
it?
survived Hurricane Katrina, though. What the hell?
Holy shit, man. And then there was one more little update as of July 23rd, 2018, which is more recent. It says, sold only a few months after the Poe daguerreotype was finally authenticated and returned to the Hampton Booth Library. It was put up for and they were going to put it up for auction anyway?
Dude, that's bullshit. That is unreal. That poor woman. That's not
It
fair.
was put up for auction at Sotheby's in October 2006 and sold for the final hammer price of $150,000. And the
Yeah.
proceeds of the sale went to the benefit of the Hampton Booth.
God.
It sucks that like most people like what was that song the band Perry, If I Die Young.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lyric that said, they don't, I forget exactly what it is, but something to the extent of like people only care about you once you're dead. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you're only worth something when you're dead. And it sucks that like, he has so much to share during his lifetime. So many stories. And like Vincent van Gogh was another one that like he didn't see a penny in his day until he was long dead and buried.
My boss and I had this conversation like last week because we were talking about just getting commissions and things like that, what I'm doing lately. And
Yeah.
it's like, we're going to make you a famous artist yet. I was like, I'm going to have to die first. Like I said,
Yeah,
like, in
man.
passing. But that's the
It
truth.
fucking sucks, but
I
it's
mean,
the
at least Pablo Picasso like got to see his fame, and like Monet got a little fame, but he was starving artist also for a long time.
right.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Woo.
Quite the rabbit hole.
So speaking of artists,
Yeah.
are there more modern daguerreotype artists out there?
There was one that I saw specifically that kind of popped out at me because it's so. All right, if you thought human daguerreotypes were fucking creepy, have you ever seen a daguerreotype of an animal?
No.
Look at this shit. So this artist is called the Ragged Caravan on Instagram.
Okay.
And they do creepy daguerreotypes of Victorian animals such as rabbits, crows, mice. And this is a quote directly from them. And they say, a lot of research goes into these little beauties, and each of the listings gives details of the age and provenance of the brass mats, preservers, and case designs, all of which are during or pre-American Civil War era. And of course, they each come with this special little portrait inside. So just take a look at some
I'm
of
looking,
these.
dude. I'm scrolling. This is cool. I'm glad you're already following them on our Magnolia Street. These are sick.
Yeah, they do figures, they do daguerreotypes. They have a whole collection. There's like a collection of the different daguerreotypes of the different animals.
Mhm.
They have Etsy shop, etsy.com/shop/the Ragged Caravan. So go check them out. Give them some daguerreotype love. If you're into these things, go buy something. Just want to shout out other up and coming artists that like me and Christina were just talking about. So many artists go unrecognized until they're no longer here. So just trying to shout out some artists and get them the love and attention they deserve while they're still here on this planet.
I'm feeling very into artists right now.
I love it. Yeah. There's a shop in New Hope, Pennsylvania, where we often go on like day trips and stuff. There's a shop called the Creeper Gallery.
Yeah.
And they have shit like this. They have like taxidermied goats and like coffins, like of like children's coffins from like the early 1800s, like creepy shit. Yeah. I think they even had like a cursed doll that was like in the back of the shop, like
Oh my God.
super
I love
creepy.
it. This topic has been on our list from the beginning because it was like one of those little things about the movie that was said so quickly in the commentary. And I was like, what's
Intrigued.
that? Like just
Yeah.
that little piece of trivia that as a 13, 14-year-old, I was like, they used a daguerreotype process to make Jimmy's eyes look like that. Some shit bullshit like that.
Right,
But
yeah.
I always thought it was fascinating. I had no idea it was used for so many things for so
Yeah.
long that and the FBI was involved, Poe was involved, Albert
Dude.
Magnus was involved.
Yeah, my brother's involved.
Your brother's involved. Get out of here, Ben.
That was a twist I was not expecting. Yeah. I was gonna say you've been wanting to talk about this since you were 13.
It was like that little piece of trivia that I had in my
Yeah.
back pocket that I felt like cool knowing about.
Yeah.
Not that anybody else watched this movie besides my one friend and I, but like I just
Yeah.
thought it was so cool. And this, we actually, didn't I write this into our schedule, our calendar way early on? And you were like, we're not going to do that one yet. We're going to wait for
Yeah.
spooky season. And it's
Yeah, yeah.
perfect because it's the perfect kickstart for spooky season, September. So
I agree. This was perfect.
Yep.
I'm so jazzed about this topic, and I can't wait to get into ex-boyfriends and hauntings and exorcisms and all that other shit coming up.
So our next one, we're going to be doing a little magic and lore. Next one, then we have a song-isode, then we have a character analysis, then we have the spooky shit coming at you.
Lots of good stuff. And our 1 year anniversary is right around the corner.
That's all we have, right? But just as a reminder, you can check out all of the sources pertaining to today's episode via the hero.page link in our show notes. Thank you so much again to our patron and our pal, Mears, for creating this amazing app that keeps creators like us organized. It's amazing. I really recommend using this hero.page. It's fantastic.
It is fantastic.
Yeah. If you would like to support our podcast, please visit our Patreon, patreon.com/Magnolia Street Podcast. There are different tiers depending on your budget. We have a $1 seedling tier that gets you access to our Patreon only polls where you can weigh in on what topics you would like us to talk about next. It also gets you our monthly calendar so you can see what topics are coming up for that month and weigh in on the conversation. If you have any knowledge about that certain topic, shout it out to us and we'd love to share it on the show. And it also gets you a shout out of your name on our show and a little thank you.
Yeah.
We have a $3 lavender bud tier that gets you our show notes for each episode in a little authentically pleasing PDF. And like I'm saying, I really like stuff like this where it has all the links. Everything we talked about is right there in a PDF.
Mhm.
We have after hours posts if there's any extra little tidbits or behind the scenes info pertaining to any of our episodes. We'll post them there along with blog posts, extra photos, paintings Justina and I have done. We're going to be posting the black and white photography we're going to try and find and post.
Yeah.
And it gets you access to specifically curated Spotify playlists. We have created playlists for our WMSR episodes, as well as production dream playlists for each song-isode and more. We also have a $5 Lilac tier, and this gets you access to our private Facebook community where we host monthly live streams. We got a live stream at the end of August.
Yeah, we got one coming up.
Ooh, shit.
We got to make a little banner for it.
We do gotta make it. Yeah. So this also gets you access into our Discord server where we host monthly watch parties. We're going to try to do those more. If you guys are into those, please let us know because initially it doesn't really seem like people had the time, kind of busy. We want to do these. I think having a movie night with all your buddies is just such a fun time. So please let us know. Join our $5 Patreon tier and we can host a nice watch party for you. Also on our Discord server, you can join in on the discussion with other Magnolia Street neighbors via the various interesting channels and threads. And then we have our $8 Rose tier, and it gets you access to any audiovisual content, such as our once a month full-length video episodes, ultimate bonus episodes, uncut footage, cutting room floor footage, bloopers, outtakes, meditations, exclusive interviews, old home videos from the vault, spells and rituals, and so much. There's so much stuff over there, as well as bonus content to coincide with our song-isodes, such as full-length demo streams of our original Practical Magic-inspired music, plus lyric sheets, guitar chords, original scratch demos, and bonus video performances of all of our songs and more. Lastly, our big kahuna is our $15 Wisteria Vine tier. Just like a twisting Wisteria Vine, there is a way for you to stay connected with us. The Stinas! In this tier, we invite you to join our private Marco Polo video messaging group. The app is totally free for both Android and iOS, so you can sign up with your phone number or email, and we'll help you do the rest. This is an awesome, great way to just chat with each other more intimately. We love to show each other our pets and our gardens and anything else that you'd like to share. We just like learning about you. And just a reminder that the higher tier you sign up under, the more rewards you get, because you get all of those rewards in the tiers below it. So you can upgrade or downgrade or even cancel at any time to help support us, the little Magnolia Street that we are. Justina and I really appreciate your support. So head to our patreon.com/Magnolia Street Podcast.
Yeah, so there are ways that you guys can support the podcast that don't cost any money at all. You can leave us a review, a star rating on Spotify, or if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, you can leave us a written review, be part of our review crew. We'd love to post your review on our Insta feed. So yeah, we would appreciate any reviews you guys want to share with us. We also have some merch. We have some awesome designs on our Teespring shop, which you can access through the Koji link in our Instagram bio, and you can get our original designs on pretty much any kind of apparel, as well as other items like coffee mugs, stickers, tote bags, water bottles. And if you don't see something that you want, like an item that you want our artwork on, just let us know and we can probably set that up for you. And then lastly, we just want to remind you guys about our upcoming event. The Stinas will be taking over Salem, Massachusetts.
Ayo.
We're hosting a Midnight Margarita meetup on Friday the 13th of this October from 9 to midnight. If you want to find out the place, you got to go to our Eventbrite link. We'll have exclusive merch for this event. A season 1 poster and a t-shirt will be available for purchase, which we would be happy to sign for you at the event. The purchase link for these, that's live now, right? So you guys can check that out in our Koji link in our bio on our Instagram. And we did tease a small video clip of the poster, so if you guys want a little sneak peek of that, go over there and check that out. These will only be available for a limited time only through November 1st. So once that 1-year anniversary rolls around, these are gone, and you're not gonna get them anymore. So
they're going into the vault.
Yeah, get them while they're hot. So be sure to RSVP to our event via the Eventbrite link, which is where you can also find the update about the location or anything else that, we might have to add last minute to the event, anything you might need to know. And again, that link is in our show notes and also in our Koji link in our Instagram bio. And space is limited, so please RSVP at your earliest convenience so we can let the venue know how many people we can expect. So I think that's pretty much it. Right?
I'm so excited.
I know. It's getting
so
closer.
excited.
Getting closer.
Dude, and we have something pretty freaking stinking amazing before this. Can't tell you yet, but keep an ear out. Keep your nose to the grindstone. Keep your ear to the ground, because something's in the works.
We might be able to tell you guys in the next episode. We'll play it by ear.
Yes.
All right.
That's it. This was awesome.
This was awesome. My head is
time.
Do you ever feel like your brain's gonna explode with all the information we learn on this podcast?
I can't wait to go bore my husband with this information.
Yeah. Avi's gonna be like, Daguerre, what?
Sick.
All right, man. I'm ready to close out.
I'm Christina.
I'm Justina. I want to say stay spooky.
Stay spooky.
Stay spooky.
At that house down the street, at that house on Magnolia Street, would you go down to Magnolia Street where the wisteria grow out? And that house of magic and mystery, so would you go down to Magnolia Street?
It sounded like that ghost. How do you do that?
I don't know, but that's Avi's favorite impression.
I can't do it.
It's like the drugstore shaking ghost. I always see those in like CVS or like Walgreens, right?
So fucking funny.